frightened people tried to help a man on whom an iron beam fell. The guy just wanted to live, but constant failures led to a terrible and stupid death. Everything happened too unexpectedly, and now the dead guy was able to be reborn into a baby named Zeke. But before this, the main character had to meet with a guide between life and death. The guide knew about the guy's hard life and decided to help him. The guide advised the guy not to worry, because he will be able to be reborn into a new body, and also he will get special privileges and will be a special person. The main character's memory will stay with him, and as a bonus he gets the protection of a reborn soul. All this information was so complicated that the guy did not immediately perceive it. And as the most generous gift would be the ability of the evaluative eye, which would be a useful tool in his new life. This unique ability was specially made for the guy, and the guide advised him to prepare for his new life. The guide presented the whole event as a world lottery, and the guy only had to recognize his new reality. The guide promised the young guy incredible luck in his new world, because that's what he saw in his mysterious lottery. After that, the hero fell into an endless void, and the last thing he remembered was the wish of a successful new life from the guide and his magnificent smile. It was very strange to feel so helpless and infant. Still, there was a caring environment and a loving mother around. The maid cared for the child as much as his parents and even advised the father, Mr. Gilbert, to be as gentle as possible with the child so as not to frighten him in any way. Little Zeke, that's what his loving parents called him, watched the world around him with interest, though of course he couldn't walk or talk. The guide warned him that the new world would be different from the old one and all the peculiarities would have to be learned in the process of development. Zeke became very curious as to how his evaluative eye worked, which the guide said could greatly enhance his perception and knowledge of the new world. Eventually, Zeke just thought about his evaluative eye, and suddenly a whole group of information windows opened up for him. Everything looked like it was in a game, and each of the information windows was filled with important information. The luck parameter was at 200 units, and after looking at the other parameters, Zeke decided that he would be useless ballast in this world as well. At that moment, two young beautiful girls, Marian and Theobald, entered the room, and the maid Anna asked the girls to be very quiet. The girls were most admired for their silver hair and violet eyes, just like their mothers were. Zeke, getting used to his small body, even managed to grab his sister Theobald's hand, and it was a complete surprise for the girl. Marian promised to take care of her little brother, and the sisters wanted to play with him as soon as possible and introduce him to their favorite toys. While the sisters argued about the toys, Zeke was surprised by their energy and decided that in the future the loving sisters would be around all the time. Theobald and Marian promised to play and walk with him all the time. But for that, of course, Zeke had to grow up a bit. Marian gave thanks that Zeke had been born and would now live with them. Zeke realized at that moment how lucky he was to have a family of his own, because everyone surrounded him with care and love. The parents then began to discuss some important event called the awakening. Gilbert's father viewed the process negatively, and Lyra reminded him of Willie. Zeke, listening to his sister's conversation, realized that it was about his uncle Willie. Gilbert called Willie a trustworthy knight who was making incredible progress, and Theobald asked her parents if Zeke could avoid the awakening process. But her father still reminded her that awakening was a mandatory ritual for aristocrats, and Zeke should learn magic or practice martial arts. Theobald didn't want her little brother to be found to have a top-level attribute. After all, because of this, another brother, Gert, was taken to a magic academy at the age of 5. Gert ended up in the academy, and now he had no time to come home, and it all happened because of the ability evaluators. Gilbert thought Gert was gifted, but he couldn't protect his son, and now his father decided not to repeat that mistake and wanted to protect Zeke. In this world, talented children are taken to a magical academy, and Zeke certainly didn't want to live away from his loving family. Zeke lay in his bed trying to study his parameters and wanted to hide them. He had to do it before tomorrow to avoid becoming another guinea pig at the Magic Academy. Life under the care of caring parents seemed to be exactly what was missing, and that's why Zeke sincerely hoped to stay here. Suddenly, an unfamiliar voice addressed Zeke, and calling him Mr. explained that the assistant option had been enabled. The helper decided that the guy had not yet mastered the skill of the evaluative eye and called this skill a huge advantage. And then the helper even advised to hide his real status from outsiders. The personal assistant talked about the possibility of using the status concealment skill, and it interested Zeke. But at the moment, Zeke wasn't prepared enough for it, and the guy didn't know what to do. The assistant advised to take the training, and maybe tomorrow this feature would appear. But Zeke didn't believe in his success. The aide drew his master's attention to the available 1,000 points of blessing defense. But Zeke didn't understand how he could use these points. As it turned out, these blessing points could activate several skills, including the status concealment skill. Zeke wanted to use the available points right away, but the assistant advised him to be careful with his choice, because these points could come in handy in the future. But Zeke realized that there was no other choice in this situation. The boy didn't want to lose his new family where he was loved, and the assistant agreed with his master's decision and promised to help. The next day, Willie arrived at the Gilbert estate and was happy to be in his native home. The popularity of the illustrious Willie was immense, for even the maids enjoyed the presence of the hero. Willie was very happy to see Lyra, with whom they had not seen for a very long time. Laughing, Willie immediately advised his brother not to be jealous, for his sister-in-law was as beautiful as ever and it was foolish not to notice it. Lyra was happy about the birth of her son, and Willie congratulated Zeke's parents on this event. That's why the hero came home, because he wanted to see baby Zeke in person. Willie, holding Zeke in his arms, explained to the little child that he was his uncle and would always take care of him. Zeke was worried, and Willie marveled at how much the baby looked like his beautiful mother. Everyone agreed, for Zeke had indeed adopted Lyra's features and even her rare eye color. Uncle Willie decided to use his evaluation eye ability and test the baby's abilities, and Zeke was scared at that moment. Uncle Willie was looking at his nephew so intently that the look made Zeke uncomfortable. Zeke was very reluctant to show his abilities, even though his father and uncle were waiting for the exact result of the examination. And in the end, Uncle Willie declared that the kid had no higher attributes, and Gilbert exhaled in relief. Zeke was very happy with this result and now felt much calmer. Zeke had been able to use the status concealment skill, and he had left just the normal abilities in plain sight, while hiding the strong ones. Willie explained that the baby had the same attributes as his mother, and everyone was happy with the result. The parents thanked God that their prayers had been answered and the little son would stay in the family. Zeke was pleased with himself, for not only had he managed to hide his strong skills, but he had also managed to please his family. Zeke could now feel at ease and wanted to live a life that he had not been able to live in the other world. Meanwhile, Willie continued his examination, but then unexpectedly Zeke began to show magical activity, and real magical wings formed around his body. Willie called little Zeke a real lucky boy, because he has huge wings and it means he is blessed by God, but his father was sad about it. Zeke was shocked by his uncle's words, and Willie explained to everyone that he had noticed the child had huge magical powers, which meant he was a special person. The boy realized that things were going badly, though he didn't know the full meaning of his uncle's words. According to his uncle, the boy had much more magic power than even he had. Willie called it a huge problem, because if the Ministry of Magic knew about it, they would take Zeke away. The boy was shocked at what was happening and didn't know where he went wrong, because he was trying very hard not to repeat his past fate. Willie called Zeke a special kid, because he has a lot of magical power that is hard to measure, and he is most likely a true high-level child. These words caused shock to his father and fear to Zeke. The kid decided that with his level of luck, he would definitely not get out of this situation now. Uncle Willie suggested that God had given Gilbert a special child, and there was even an ancient legend about how such a person could become a god. Willie advised to give the child to a magical academy, but Gilbert was strongly against it. Zeke didn't want to leave such a kind family, but he didn't know how to help himself to solve this problem. Lyra was happy to know that her child was a special person, and she was confident that Zeke could grow up to be a very strong person. Even so, the woman asked to protect Zeke from the magical academy by any means necessary. Gilbert was in solidarity with his wife and promised his wife to do everything to protect their son. But the main problem was the child's immense magical power, which could not be hidden during the evaluation procedure. Willie offered to decide what attributes the child had acquired and who he really was, and Zeke listened to the conversation between the adults and began to understand the rules of this world. Gilbert asked his brother if there was a way to hide the child's magic power, and Willie advised him not to tell anyone about the child's power, and only by this method would it be possible to protect the child from the government. Such words of Willie made the brother think twice before making a decision. In the end, the two brothers decided not to report the child's magical powers and pretend they didn't exist. And Zeke felt needed for the first time in his life, and it was a wonderful feeling he hadn't experienced in his previous life. Lyra hoped for success and really wanted her little son to always be by her side. And Willie called it all a secret of 5 people and promised to keep the secret. Then the caring uncle called those who had overheard this conversation from behind the door, and it surprised Gilbert. They were the 2 curious sisters Theobald and Mariana, and Gilbert did not expect them to eavesdrop at all. Their father back unacceptable behavior and reminded his daughters that it was not acceptable to eavesdrop on adult conversations. Each of the sisters began to take responsibility for the act, defending each other. and the uncle wondered if the girls cared so much about their brother. The sisters did not want to part with their brother and therefore worried, but still admitted their mistake. Lyra praised her daughters and explained that their father along with their uncle would try to protect Zeke. Such care and love from the relatives caused Zeke's joyful emotions and she began to cry with happiness. Meanwhile, Uncle Willie explained to the sisters that they should not tell anyone about this conversation. Willie promised the girls punishment if they broke their promise, and Zeke was delighted with his uncle, which scared Mariana and Theobald a lot. Of course, the sisters were willing to keep a secret about their little brother, and Willie called the children loyal to their word. And Gilbert had no doubts about his favorite daughters, of whom he was very proud. Uncle Willie then announced Zeke's attributes to the whole nation, and so the government ended up not taking him away from the Magic Academy. All of this was great news for Zeke. A few months later, little Zeke was growing up and enjoying his life in a new uncharted world. Zeke remembered his past horrible life, but now he considered himself a real lucky boy, and even his magical assistant confirmed it. The one-eyed creature explained to his master that thanks to his memory Zeke had managed to stay in this family. But the boy had spent 444 blessing points to hide his skills, and had decided that it had all been set up beforehand. The little counselor told how in his previous life Zeke had died in an accident, and was now born a special person in a new world. And of course, having been between life and death, he is in a state of bewilderment. And so there is no mistake in everything that happened, and Zeke was chosen by God. It was the first time the guy heard such words from his assistant, but still all this information was already known to him. But still this peculiarity bothered Zeke, and he suggested that maybe this world would be against it. Zeke asked for more details about the conversation between the adults, but the magic counselor refused to talk about it this time. He was more interested in the vast number of books, and Zeke explained that they were spell books for beginners that he was trying to study with interest. The maid Anna was surprised by the guy's desire to study books, and so she brought him some interesting books. The main character liked to study these books so much, because in some incredible way he completely understood their content, perceiving the unfamiliar language. All that remained was to learn how to use magic effectively, and the assistant promised to help with that. Zeke had learned a lot of useful information over the past month. As it turned out, there were 12 magical attributes in this world, and in order to start using magic one had to have at least a few of them. All this was very exciting because even when combining different attributes of magic they can give different power. And this whole world of magic and spells resembled some incredible fantasy tale. But if the attributes are not combined with each other, then the magic will not work, and therefore it is important to clearly match the attributes with each other. Each magician has an individual magic, and the magic for beginners is the attribute of light. With the attribute of light you can illuminate the darkness, and so as a preparation it is better to use a dark time of day, and preferably by the light of the moon. It was also amazing that Zeke was reminded of his past life where the road was lit by fireflies. Zeke, trying to concentrate, was still able to use his magical abilities to create something like fireflies that instantly lit up the room. This success made the boy happy, and it was obvious that such magic would be very useful, and his knowledge from the past helped to create the fireflies. Zeke felt excited and wanted to learn as much information as possible about the magical powers of this world. And he also wanted to use more magical energy to produce a light as bright as the sun. Such attempts really pleased Zeke, but too bright light made his eyes hurt, and so he decided to be more careful next time, so as not to hurt himself. But despite all this, he wanted to learn as much as he could about magical energies every day. Just at that moment, Gilbert's father came into the room and was surprised at what his little son was doing. In the next room, Lyra was chatting quietly with Anna, the maid, and looking at a picture of her eldest son, Gert, whom she missed dearly. But just at that moment, Gilbert burst into the room and informed everyone that Zeke had already learned to stand on his feet. The maid Anna was indignant at Gilbert's behavior, because it was not right to burst into the room so suddenly and make noise. But his father explained that he wanted to show how his little son was already standing on his feet. Lyra was delighted with the news and was not angry with her husband at all. Zeke was a little frightened by this attention from the adults because he had used magic and was able to stand on his feet. But it was unknown whether it was normal to have such abilities at such an age, if his father was so excited. Gilbert assumed that his son would soon be able to move around on his own, but Zeke didn't want to show such abilities, because it could be very suspicious. But of course he didn't want to upset his mother, and in the end the boy decided to make an attempt to start walking. It was not an easy task, but Zeke tried to do his best and take a few steps. It was very difficult to do, because the body of a small child is disproportionate, but still Zeke managed to reach his mom. His father was happy with such progress in his little son and called him a special child. But Zeke didn't want to stand out in this world and did it just to please his caring parents. Just at that moment, Hans the butler appeared nearby and immediately made a joke about how Gilbert was ignoring his work, and then asked the master to go back to his study and finish his important business. But of course the master of the house was more important to be with the baby, who was starting to walk. But the incredibly responsible butler insisted. And finally Gilbert, in a disgruntled voice, promised to return to work. Lyra advised her husband not to worry and to leave Zeke with her, because as the master of the house he still had important things to do. The butler, meanwhile, continued to grumble and advised him to always finish his work, to which Gilbert only apologized and went to his office. After Gilbert left, Lyra asked Anna to bring some books for Zeke, and as it turned out the maid had already prepared suitable books in advance. Zeke was thinking about how much he wanted to grow up faster and start using magic so he would be in more ridiculous situations. Mom of course immediately offered her young son to rest and sleep, for he needed to regain his strength. Lyra was a very caring mom and was looking forward to her little son becoming an adult and strong boy. In his mom's gentle arms, Zeke felt calm and relaxed. Lyra was very happy around her son and promised him that he would definitely become the best man in this world. Watching his mother, Zeke noticed her behavior and it seemed somehow strange to him. Lyra wished her child to live freely and not to be subjected to the authority of this country, because in the future he would surely face many problems. Mom called her son a special child who should be stronger and braver than all other people, because only in this way he could not depend on anyone. Lyra cried unexpectedly for Zeke and promised to always be at her child's side, for she wanted more than anything for his dreams to come true and for him to always be free. The mother's gentle hands hugged the child and the girl sincerely wanted her little son to be happy. It all looked like Lyra was saying goodbye and wanted to say the most important words. Suddenly the young mistress lost consciousness and did not say anything else, and the maid who entered the room dropped her books and was very frightened. Not understanding what was going on here, Anna tried to bring the mistress to her senses, but no amount of trying by the maid helped her. Zeke was so badly shocked that he didn't even know how to take it all in. A few days later at the Magical Academy, Gert was informed about the letter that his father Gilbert had sent. But the young student didn't want to hear anything about his father. The messenger still advised him to read the letter, for it contained a horrible message about his mother's death, and it gave Gert a shock. The lad simply could not believe what he had heard, for so unreal and horrifying it seemed. Gert left all his affairs at the Magic Academy and returned home to attend his mother's funeral. The eldest son felt hatred for everything that was happening and looked at Zeke disdainfully. Everyone was shocked by the sudden death of the young mistress and expressed their condolences to Gilbert. And Alberto still refused to believe in his mother's death. The funeral of a loved one was not a joyous event in life, and Willie sincerely regretted such a loss and advised his sibling to try to get at least some rest. But Gilbert only replied that he was all right. Willie, of course, saw the terrible state his brother was in after Lyra's death and asked if Gilbert had been able to sleep at least a few hours afterward. But Gilbert could not sleep, and now that his beloved wife was not with him, he thought only of the safety of his children, which was above all else. By the children's side, of course, was Anna, and she was trying to help them bear this terrible grief, though she herself was suffering greatly over the death of her mistress. Zeke assumed that their mother had been gravely ill and couldn't bear the fact that he had lost his dearest person right after his birth. Lyra was a very gentle and beautiful girl, and no one would have thought that she was so seriously ill. Zeke regretted that he couldn't use his appraising eye ability to help his mom. Zeke once again felt like a useless person who could repeat his past fate of being a total loser. Alberto asked Theo where he was going, since it was better for everyone to be together now. The girl decided that Gert should have arrived by now, and most likely he went straight to say goodbye to his mom. Alberto agreed, for they knew how much Gert loved his mother and suffered greatly when he had to leave home. After that, Gert showed up at the manor but tried not to socialize with anyone despite the attention of his sister Theobald. The young wizard was shocked by the loss and blamed absolutely everyone for it, so he asked Theo not to speak to him. Unexpectedly, Gert used his magical abilities and tried to unleash all his anger against little Zeke. Anna tried to hide the youngest son of the family, and Zeke was scared by his brother's attack and didn't understand what was going on. Gert used thunder arrows to destroy the little man. No one had ever seen such hatred before, and Anna didn't know what to do. Everyone present, of course, rushed to intervene in the situation and block Gert's path, for he really could now destroy not only Zeke, but Anna as well. But still, Zeke was hit by the magic arrows, and the sisters ordered to immediately call someone for help, for healing magic was needed now. But Gert would not be appeased and demanded to get out of his way and stay out of the way. The enraged wizard blamed little Zeke for the death of his beloved mother and wanted to get rid of his brother. Gert knew how much his mother's health had deteriorated after Zeke's birth, and so his little brother was the main reason for her death. And now the young wizard didn't want to hear any excuses, having lost his ability to think like a healthy person. Alberto, who tried to stop the enraged Gert, could not resist his magical power and ended up being attacked. But still Alberto tried to jump aside. A few minutes later, Gilbert and his brother Willie entered the room and were shocked to see what was happening. Willie immediately used healing magic to help Anna and Zeke and hoped he was here in time. The father thanked his daughters for their instant reaction, and Willie was able to effectively help Anna and Zeke, and now they are much better now that they have recovered from the harmful effects of Gert's magic. Willie was shocked by his nephew's behavior and asked Gilbert to isolate Gert because he might kill Zeke. Willie, gently holding the boy in his arms, was horrified at how much hardship this child had to endure in his short life and wanted to help him. Theobald and Marion were still frightened after what had happened, and Willie suggested that the sisters go with him, unless of course they wanted to stay. Anna blamed herself for not being able to protect the child, but Willie advised the maid to calm down and rest as she was injured. But the responsible Anna did not worry about her own health, because she thought that the most important thing for her was the young master's well-being. Willie was amazed at the woman's fortitude and thanked her for her work. Then the whole family tried to find out why Gert had tried to do such a cruel thing to his younger brother. After all, he should have realized that Zeke was a defenseless infant who was not guilty of anything. But Gert was completely filled with rage and anger and didn't want to listen to anyone. But Marie asked his brother to answer how newborn baby Zeke could have hurt his mother. Everyone asked Gert to calm down and think hard about everything that was going on because he was not right in this situation. But the young enraged wizard tried to break free from the magical shackles and still wanted to kill his little brother. Marion was shocked by Gert's behavior and asked her father to protect Zeke from her older angry brother. The girl explained that she was ready to personally protect her younger brother, even if she had to become an enemy to Gert to do so, because it was impossible to allow murder. Willie perceived everything that was happening negatively and asked his brother why he was still silent and did not react to Gert's behavior. Gilbert did not really know how to act, because any decision he made in this situation could be difficult and could harm the children. Gert had seen his newborn brother become everyone's favorite right after his birth, and received all the attention of the family. Unlike him, who was an outcast in his own family, Gert saw himself as an outsider, and he was also very annoyed by Zeke's resemblance to his mom. Gert believed that his younger brother had stolen his mother's love and it was his fault, so he was just a little monster. The young wizard vowed to never forgive his little brother. Meanwhile, in the next room, Theo and Marie finally waited for Zeke to wake up. The girls immediately started hugging and telling their little brother how much they were worried about his health. Uncle Willie was also very concerned about Zeke's well-being and eventually decided that he was fine, even though he had to face the horrible aura of hatred coming from his older brother Gert. Zeke was truly frightened even by the sight of his older brother, who seemed like a true madman who only wanted to kill. Marie and Theo were worried about everything that was going on and apologized to their little brother for not being able to protect him and not being in the right place in time. But Zeke didn't blame them, of course. Uncle Willie had promised not to let Gert's older brother near Zeke again and had decided to keep an eye on the baby's body. Zeke, of course, realized that he was on the verge of death himself, and only his uncle had appeared in time to save him. The sisters, unlike Gert, wanted to help their little brother and certainly did not blame him for the death of their beloved mother. The girls considered themselves responsible for the child, for it was much more difficult for him than for them. Marie was too tired and decided to take a nap, because she had lost a lot of strength when she helped to heal her brother. Willie advised Theo to follow her sister's example and rest too. Theo wanted to be with her mom now and thought Zeke was innocent, but luckily Uncle Willie was with them. And now they were all together in the same room, and it seemed as if Mom was still with them and all the memories of their childhood were only good. Uncle Willie showed concern for the children and considered them practically family. The sisters were too tired after the busy events and all decided to have a good rest. Zeke at this point only regretted not being able to talk. After Uncle Willie put the children to bed, he decided to talk to his brother and try to solve some problems that could not be ignored. Willie immediately inquired about Gert's condition, but as it turned out it was very bad. Gilbert tried to talk to his son, but he refuses to hear him and blames Zeke for everything. But the most surprising thing to Willie was that Gilbert was sympathetic to Gert. In fact, Gilbert had no idea what to do with his angry son and was completely surprised by Gert's desire to kill his own younger brother in the most brutal way. Willie expressed his suspicions about the Magical Academy because this organization was becoming too suspicious. Gilbert agreed with his brother, for his son Gert had become a very strange person after his training. Willie even suggested that maybe the Magic Academy teaches children something forbidden, and that could explain why parents are not allowed to go there, and the whole training remains a secret. Gilbert decided to find out immediately, but his weakened body to action and strong man almost fainted. Willie immediately came to his brother's aid and asked him to get some rest. He promised his tired brother to take care of the children. But Gilbert was angry because of his powerlessness and wanted to find out what had been done to his son at the Magic Academy as soon as possible. After Gilbert gave in to his brother's entreaties and went to bed, Willie went outside and thought about the difficult situation the family was in. Lyra's death, Gilbert's weakness, it was all very difficult. But still Willie believed in his own strength and decided that he could cope with the problems, and all the enemies who are waiting for the defeat and decline of this family will be disappointed. Willie decided that the main thing is to survive the difficult period, and in the end they will be able to become stronger. After all these events, little Zeke, with the consciousness of an adult, began to realize how hard it is for his relatives to cope with problems, and so he decided to become stronger and smarter as soon as possible. Zeke studied various books on magic and gained a lot of knowledge. The guy constantly remembered his kind and beautiful mother, and it was the memory of her that became the main motivation for future growth. And so it was necessary to achieve high results in order to please his mother. Mastering more and more complex magic combinations, little Zeke enjoyed the process and rejoiced in his successes, because every day he was getting stronger and closer to his goal. 4 years later, of course, all the children had grown up and little Zeke was already moving and socializing freely. Theo gradually stopped by a beautiful girl and Zeke asked her to wait. His sister looked at her little brother with interest and did not understand what he wanted, and the little one asked his sister to take him with her, for he wanted to learn something new. Zeke already knew, of course, that Theo was a member of the Adventurers Guild and was now going to another training session, so he was very eager to keep him company and see it with his own eyes. His sister was shocked by his younger brother's behavior and didn't even understand how he knew everything. Of course, all of this was made possible by the unique ability of the evaluation eye, and now Zeke could see all of his sister's characteristics and rank. According to the characteristics in her status, she had recently become an adventurer. But despite his younger brother's pleas, Theo didn't want to take him with him because he was still a very young child, so it was too early for him to do such dangerous things. But Zeke of course disagreed with his sister's opinion, and after demonstrating his magical abilities, he said that he could even fight on his own. Theo was very surprised and didn't understand how her younger brother could possess such powerful magic at such an age. Zeke explained everything by constant home training and studying a huge number of books. The boy declared his desire to become much stronger, because despite the study of magical secrets and various combinations, he could not raise his level on his own. No matter how much effort Zeke spent on overcoming the level, he constantly faced failure. The assistant kept explaining that Zeke's level was too low, and so he was wasting a lot of energy, not converting it into magic at all, and therefore wasting his energy. According to the assistant, Zeke was still in the developmental stage, but he could use his evaluation eye. And in order to improve his level, it was necessary not only to study books, but of course to defeat monsters. That's why the young wizard decided to start fighting, because otherwise he would not be able to achieve his goal, which his beloved mother once told him about. Theo of course agreed that the only way to develop was to gain combat experience, but still Zeke was too young for her and he didn't need to raise his level yet. The girl just didn't understand why her brother was so impatient. Zeke explained his impatience by his desire to become strong as soon as possible, because as long as he was weak he could not protect anyone. And he is very sad at the thought, and that's why he has to become stronger. Theo remembered at this point how she herself had asked Gert to take her with her in the past and decided not to repeat her older brother's mistake. Theo ended up ordering the butler hands to prepare the carriage and announced that she would be traveling to the training with her brother. This thrilled Zeke, and he of course thanked his favorite sister for her agreement, though Theo immediately stated that it would be the only time she agreed. Theo also ordered her little brother to never take a step away from her, because if he broke that rule he could be in danger. Zeke was willing to do absolutely anything for the sake of going to training and raising his level. During the trip, Theo explained the purpose of their training, which was to catch white rabbits, but at the same time they should not forget that there are a lot of other monsters in the forest. The white rabbit was quite a dangerous monster, and so her sister ordered Zeke to stay behind her back. But even though today was a day of practical training and they were not supposed to meet any serious monsters, Theo advised her brother to try his best to succeed. Zeke was very happy to be around Theo, because unlike her, Marie didn't want her younger brother to take risks at such a young age. And after that injury as a child, she had taken care of him constantly, and sometimes it even felt like overprotective care. Zeke was of course grateful to Marie for her incredible care and didn't at all hinder her endeavors to always be there for him. Zeke had been happy and loved all of his relatives since his first day in this world. After Theo and Zeke reached their destination, they left the carriage and prepared for the task at hand. Her sister once again advised her younger brother to stay behind, for she absolutely did not want to feel Marie's wrath. Theo asked Hans to come to the place in the evening and pick them up, and asked the butler not to tell anyone about this little trip. Still, Hans advised to notify her father about it, but Theo promised to tell him about it herself. After the carriage with Hans had traveled back to the manor, Theo decided to meet her trusted friend Nicole and introduce him to her little brother. Zeke was happy to be in this forest with his sister and decided that if he held hands with her it would please Theo very much. It did cause the girl to be surprised, and it pleased her. Theo looked at her little brother carefully and promised to protect him today, and all he has to do is trust her. But then they went to a beautiful place with magnificent fountains. After a while they managed to reach the White Forest, and Zeke was delighted by the beautiful nature and the magnificent colors. Theo explained that this place is imbued with magic power, and that's why the plants are all white in color. Also, in this dense forest there are many different monsters, and it is a great place for new adventurers. Moving forward, the girl constantly told her younger brother not to get distracted and to stay close. Soon they managed to find a friend of Nicola's that Theo was telling about, and they were going to hunt monsters together. Zeke was surprised at the appearance of the sturdy adventurer, who was happy to socialize with the newcomers. Nicola hadn't expected to see such a small adventurer, and Zeke, showing respect, introduced himself as Theo's younger brother. The adult adventurer was surprised at the excellent manners of such a little guy. Nicola promised to help during the training and show Zeke everything he needed. Theo, watching her friend give her little brother a friendly shake, asked her not to do that. Zeke meanwhile decided to use his evaluative eye and find out the characteristics of his new acquaintance. Nicola Batten possessed a D rank and level 17. This adventurer's main magical attributes were water and light, and the highest physical attribute score was attack. Nicola was only a year older than Theo and was most likely an excellent swordsman. All of this guy's stats were perfectly balanced and matched a rank D adventurer. Nicola meanwhile realized that plans had changed because of Zeke. Theo apologized for not giving any advance warning and explained that her little brother really wanted to hunt monsters to increase his level. Zeke decided to intervene in the conversation and asked for Nicola's help in today's hunt, because it was important for him to level up and he was willing to study hard to learn the skills of experienced adventurers. Nicola was interested in the determined lad and inquired about his skills, but Theo reminded her of her younger brother's age. Nicola called Zeke a funny guy and promised to help him. Zeke was happy to meet such a kind adventurer and looked forward to meeting the monster. Nicola put Zeke around his neck and offered to find the monsters immediately. Theo was worried about her little brother and was afraid that he would fall, but Nicola advised not to patronize the little warrior so much. The adventurers traveled a little deeper into the White Forest and then stopped at a quiet, inconspicuous place. Zeke wondered why they were just sitting and waiting and if it was an ambush. Theo only responded by only advising them to be patient. Nicola then talked about how Theo had paid his medical bills because he came from a poor family and couldn't pay for his seriously ill sister's treatment. The adventurer called it a very difficult time, but luckily Theo came to his aid. But the girl herself reminded that she only paid for fencing lessons, and Nicola called her too modest. Zeke of course did not know before such details from Nicola's life and decided to also help this good-natured adventurer. The little wizard promised to give him all his hard-earned money from this hunt. Nicola was surprised by Zeke's kindness and advised him not to worry, because now his main task is to level up and gain combat experience by destroying his first monster. Nicola suggested to get ready, but Zeke asked to wait a bit, because despite his desire to increase the level to at least the third, the guy still wanted to learn how to use the evaluating eye in battle. Zeke's first opponent was a white rabbit that possessed the attributes of fire and darkness, and could also use oblivion and powerful flames. Thanks to the evaluative eye, Zeke got full information about the monster. Nicola offered to help and wanted to distract the rabbit so it wouldn't run away, but Zeke decided to shoot from that spot and wasn't going to approach the monster. The distance was long in Nicola's opinion, but Zeke had already prepared to attack. The beam shot hit exactly on target, and from such precision Nicola was delighted. The adventurer couldn't believe in Zeke's skill. He was only at the first level and he was already shooting at a great distance. Theo explained to her friend that this was something they had been taught since childhood. Zeke was excited about his first battle with the monster and used his firepower. It all surprised the seasoned adventurer so much that he called Theo's family most unusual if they had such a gifted kid. Of course, after killing just one rabbit, Zeke's level didn't rise and he decided to kill some more monsters. The young wizard asked the adventurer about more monsters and Nicola promised to find out. Thanks to the magic spell Windy Storm, Theo was able to explore the area of the White Forest, did not find a cluster of white rabbits in the northwest, but not far from them was some other unknown monster. Nicola was ready to go to the monster cluster immediately, and took little Zeke in his arms again, while Theo still asked her not to run so fast and be careful with her little brother. But after a few minutes, Zeke was once again effectively destroying monsters and increasing his experience score. Soon he still managed to get to level 2 and Nicola decided that Zeke would feel much stronger now. The young wizard himself was so happy with his achievement that he even forgot to check his stats. In the end, Zeke found out that he managed to increase the index of magic by 50 units, and defense and luck by 20 units. The young wizard decided that he could soon become as strong as Nicola. The experienced adventurer praised Zeke. Apparently he managed to destroy 7 rabbits at once, and it would be good in the future to train always together, after all, so it will be much easier to reach new levels. Of course, Nicola thought that Theo was just as strong as her little brother, but this only made the girl laugh and she advised Nicola to meet her father and then he would know what strength is. Experienced one through really did not stop marveling at the abilities of Theo's family and asked to tell more about all her relatives. But Zeke realized that at the moment it was better to change the subject, so as not to tell anything unnecessary to a stranger. Of course, the young wizard wanted to rise to the 3rd level today, but still he decided to postpone it until next time. So Zeke thanked Nicola for his help, apparently really learned a lot. But suddenly the conversation was interrupted by angry goblins, who were breaking branches and bushes on their way to attack. Nicola was shocked by the appearance of an organized pack of monsters and ordered everyone to retreat back. But as it turned out, this was not the last thing that had to surprise his friends, because the pack of goblins was not going to fight at all and they just ran past, as if laughing from someone very scary. This behavior of the monsters was unusual and no one knew what it was connected with. Then after a few seconds there was a terrible cracking sound of a tree breaking and Nicola ordered everyone to immediately change position. But he was the first to see a huge tree falling on them. After the huge tree had collapsed, it turned out that Theo was left on one side and Nicola and Zeke on the other. Immediately the goblins reappeared and the adventurer prepared for battle. Theo decided that it was all a cunning friend to divide them. And despite their natural stupidity, these goblins showed incredible ingenuity and cleverness. Theo, unlike her friends, found herself in the most disadvantageous position. In front of the girl appeared a huge monster that lived in a quiet forest. Theo asked Nicola to take her little brother and immediately run away, because if they stay here, they will all die. A real goblin king of enormous size appeared before the frightened Theo. The girl realized that the enemy was incredibly strong and didn't know how such a monster could move unnoticed from the quiet forest to the White Forest. The Goblin King should have been wearing armor, but for some reason there was no armor and perhaps he had lost it in the quiet forest. Theo assumed that most likely this monster had escaped from the quiet forest and had somehow managed to break the barrier, and was now in front of her. Meanwhile, Nicola and Zeke were attacked by a mob of angry goblins. The Goblin King wasted no time and attacked his opponent, but Theo dodged the powerful blow thanks to her agility. But still the girl realized that they would not be able to defeat such a strong monster and decided to distract him so that her friend and younger brother could escape. There were no other options but to try to fight the Goblin King, and Theo remembered her promise to protect her younger brother. Nicola was also in a critical situation and realized that he couldn't defeat all the monsters, but there was nowhere to retreat in this situation. But at this moment Zeke surpassed all the adventurers' expectations and lightning attacked several opponents with a shockwave of light. Nicola was delighted with the little wizard's abilities and didn't expect to see such tremendous power in him. But still, using such a powerful magic spell took too much of Zeke's strength. He realized that his supply of magic was still too low, and his physical stats were not keeping up with the increased level. The aide explained that because of his weak body, his master could faint, and even if he was conscious he wouldn't be able to move. Zeke didn't want to give up and decided to use his magic one more time to try to destroy all the monsters at once. At this moment Theo was trying to find the weak point of the Goblin King and avoid getting hurt. But at this moment the girl felt something. An unexpected powerful blow made Theo startled and jumped aside. But what happened was completely inexplicable, and such a monster attack took Theo by surprise. Zeke heard his sisters scream and rushed to help, but Nicola grabbed him and covered him with his own back from the powerful explosion. Zeke was shocked at what was happening. The adventurer realized what a dangerous situation they were in. Nicola realized that he had almost no strength left and would soon have to face the Goblin King. With the help of the evaluating eye, they managed to find the monster's weak spot in the center of his head under his helmet, and there was a chance to defeat him with all his strength. Zeke decided to use all his power and make the Goblin King regret his action. But the most important thing was to help the wounded Theo, who suffered a powerful blow. Meanwhile, the girl remembered the moment when she failed to stop Gert and protect Zeke and always regretted it. Theo was angry at herself because of her weakness and indecision and wanted to change everything. It was because of this that Theo understood her little brother's desire to become stronger, and now she couldn't lose. The girl decided that this was not the end and she would continue to fight the Goblin King. After a few seconds, the huge monster was stopped a few meters away from Zeke with a magical grab. Theo was able to use her magical abilities to restrain the Goblin King and prevent it from attacking her little brother. Nicola meanwhile applied a light barrier, but unfortunately the huge monster was quickly destroying it. Theo decided to act as soon as possible and applied magic acceleration. And after she was near the monitor, she made a powerful blow with the spell Vortex Arrow. Nicola was delighted with Theo's abilities as she was able to do some serious damage to the enemy. The Goblin King was still alive, and Zeke asked Nicola to throw him to the monster's head to hit its weak point. Zeke was sure that he could destroy the Goblin King with his power, and this surprised the adventurer very much. Nicola believed the little partner, and after a few seconds sent Zeke to meet the Goblin King. As soon as Zeke was near the Goblin King, he gave him a magical strike, hoping for success. A powerful stream of magical light rained down on the monster, causing it to feel unbearable pain. Zeke's flaming spear hit the Goblin King's weak spot. After the crushing blow, the monster collapsed to the ground, raising a cloud of dust around it. The stunned adventurer could not immediately believe that this battle was over and continued to stand still. Zeke, at this moment losing his last strength, felt the joy of his success. But just as the assistant said, Zeke could no longer control his body and fell down, and Nicola did not have time to help the guy. But at the last moment, Theo came to the rescue and tried to catch her little brother. The girl managed to cushion Zeke's fall and inquired about his well-being. Zeke asked his sister not to worry, because he was fine, and the girl apologized for her brother getting hurt again because of her. But Zeke was happy with the result no matter what and praised his sister for helping him, because she was able to protect him from the monster. Theo hugged her beloved brother and acknowledged that this time they were able to protect each other. Nicola tried to use healing magic, but he spent too much energy and failed. And despite Zeke's gratitude, he was a little sad that he couldn't help defeat the monster. Nicola was curious about who little Zeke really was and how he managed to find the Goblin King's weak spot so quickly. But Theo immediately explained that they couldn't answer such questions for security reasons. Nicola was a little upset, but the girl explained that she had to protect her little brother by any means necessary. The experienced adventurer didn't argue and stated that he agreed with that decision. Zeke inquired about the adventurer's well-being, but Nicola called his wounds as pathetic scratches and wanted to discuss many important things. After all, he had a child defeating a Goblin King in front of his eyes, and now his self-esteem had plummeted. So Nicola promised not to tell anyone about today, and Theo thanked for understanding. The adventurers had already asked to tell what technique Zeke used during his strike, and the young wizard called it a flaming spear. Nicola was surprised by the colossal power of this spell, for the huge monster was turned into ashes. Zeke was very happy, because he was able to interest the experienced adventurer with his abilities, and these words made Nicola laugh. But despite his success, Zeke realized what a terrible monster he had faced, and he was afraid to die again and feel like a loser again. The aide advised him to forget about the past, because Zeke was now living in a completely different world. But this angered the boy. The assistant praised his master for his successful level up, and thanks to the destruction of a high-level monster, a lot of progress was made. And the fact that Zeke is a special person, he was able to survive in a dangerous situation, and now he should become more confident. It was obvious that God loved the lucky ones and therefore gave them a chance to gain power and become a special person. Zeke had heard his uncle Willie say that before, but he didn't pay much attention to it, because he always thought that people around him were only suffering because of him. However, now there really is a chance to become stronger and make sure that none of the people suffer around him, and that should be the main point. Zeke was determined by all means to gain immense power and protect everyone he loves. Shortly before Zeke's battle with the Goblin King, a wagon load of adventurers was traveling carefully along the border of the Pacific Forest carrying a valuable cargo. But a sudden powerful impact overturned the wagon and greatly frightened the adventurers. The frightened travelers were shocked by the appearance of the Goblin King and decided to run away to save their lives. The adventurers decided not to save the cargo, and in spite of the losses they ran away in panic. The valuable cargo turned out to be a small monster cub of the Holy Tiger, which now happened to be free. A few months later, Zeke went hunting again, but now with his whole family, and deftly destroyed white rabbits. Zeke decided to gradually increase his level, and he enjoyed hunting the white rabbits, showing his magical power. Marie was as always delighted with her little brother and hugged him every chance she got. The girl was proud of Zeke's success and wished him to become the strongest hero in this world. Marie loved her little brother very much and called him the sweetest creature she would never abandon. Gilbert decided that his son was very much like him, and Willie agreed, because Zeke was very good with magic powers. His father and uncle decided that ordinary magic would be enough for Zeke, and the boy at that moment tried to escape from the embrace of his energetic sister. Such progress of the little wizard surprised all members of the family, and Zeke thanked his father for appreciating his achievements. Of course, Marie was the most proud of her younger brother's achievement, and she was forever trying to rival Theo in the amount of attention she paid to Zeke. All the details of the destruction of the Goblin King had been kept secret for the sake of Zeke's protection and the entire family. Gilbert knew about the remains of the huge monster and told of the investigation that was going on. And so Alberto would keep an eye on Zeke to make sure there were no problems. Zeke was pleased with the way his father had cleverly handled everything, because now the monster was gone and no one would ever find out about anything. Marie still couldn't stop being happy about her brother's success, and despite his attempts to break free, she still hugged him and told him not to be shy. But at that moment the little wizard noticed a strange movement in the bushes and became interested in the opportunity to hunt again. Zeke instantly jumped to the ground and decided to personally check the bushes, but Marie of course was against it, and only her father could stop the girl, because she was about to run after her brother. Gilbert explained that there were no dangers in the White Forest and Zeke could walk alone. But despite her father's words, Marie was still worried about her beloved brother and felt a bad feeling. She was very frightened and decided that she should not leave Zeke alone, and therefore she must find him immediately. Gilbert and Willie were not at all surprised by Marie's behavior, because since the day Gert wanted to kill Zeke, his sister is always around and wants to protect him. Willie asked Theo how she was feeling, and the girl, not wanting to give any details, replied that she was fine. Theo explained that in her opinion her little brother was living the right life, and if he was hurt even a little, it was a normal phenomenon when a person was learning about the world around him. Willie agreed with this and suggested to keep an eye on the youngest member of the family, because it was impossible to keep him in the room like a prisoner. But Zeke could not be allowed to go beyond the barrier now, for otherwise they would have to search all over the forest for him. Zeke, meanwhile, continued his search and soon decided that he had found the right place for the monster. The monster turned out to be a small holy tiger that belonged to an endangered species. The wounded animal was terrified and unable to use its ice thunder attributes. Zeke was very surprised to meet the holy monster and asked not to be afraid of it, and then used the useful ability to recognize any unfamiliar language. Zeke thought such monsters were an endangered species and didn't understand how such a baby could be unattended in this forest. Judging from the wounds on his body, one could assume that he had encountered the Goblin King and had eventually managed to escape. Now he needed help. Zeke tried to cautiously approach the monster and explain his good intentions, but the little tiger decided to defend himself and bit the guy's hand. The young wizard still tried to help the monster and applied healing magic to it, which instantly began to heal its neglected wounds. After a few minutes, the frightened tiger cub felt much better and no longer showed any aggression towards his savior. Zeke promised the tiger cub that he would be fine now. The monster began licking the young wizard's hand in gratitude. Zeke was surprised at how pleasant the fur of this rare animal was to the touch, and it was obvious that the monster was still a real child who wanted to play. Zeke realized how frightened the tiger cub had been all this time, which meant that something bad had happened to him and he was on the verge of death. The tiger cub remembered the terrible moments in his life when he had been captured by the cruel adventurous hunters and had become nothing more than a commodity in a cage for them. Zeke noticed the tears in the animal's eyes and tried to calm him down and hugged him. The guy was very happy about this meeting, because he was able to help the defenseless monster. The tiger decided to repay the kindness of his savior and called him a good man, and then promised to always be by his side. Zeke didn't even immediately realize what exactly had happened, But then the magical assistant explained that a contract had now been made with the monster. Zeke didn't understand what was going on and asked the assistant to explain the tiger cub's behavior to him. The magical assistant called it all a blood contract with the sacred tiger. Thanks to the mutual exchange of blood with the animal, Zeke was able to bind the monster to him. But the guy couldn't believe that it all happened because the tiger had just licked a drop of his blood. But just at that moment, Mary was near the little brother, but noticed how he became a little heavier. The girl was surprised and frightened when she saw a real monster in Zeke's hands. After the children returned to their father, Gilbert thought they had brought a black cat from the forest with them. Zeke immediately clarified that the tiger cat was actually white, and they had met in the White Forest, and he was obligated to bring the monster with him, because otherwise it would have died. Gilbert was surprised by all this, and in the end he decided that the monster was probably not in its usual habitat because the magic barrier had broken. Zeke didn't want to tell his father later that the tiger cub was sacred, because then his father wouldn't let him take it with him. They had already made a contract, so now he had to somehow convince his father to let him take the lonely tiger cub with him, and for that he needed something convincing. Zeke couldn't think of anything better and simply asked his father to let him keep the little pet at home. Marie of course was against it and thought the monster was too dangerous, but Zeke promised to establish contact with the animal and reminded her of his serious injury. But the loving sister was afraid of the bite of the animal, during which you can get a serious infection. Zeke did not give up and called the little tiger cub a very docile animal. Marie was adamantly against it, but Zeke begged to be allowed to keep the tiger cub, and all this made his father think about his decision. In the end, Gilbert asked his son if he knew that every man is responsible for the one he tamed, and Zeke agreed to take full responsibility for the animal. In the end, the father allowed his son to keep the monster and asked Marie to be sympathetic to his brother's wishes. Zeke was incredibly happy and thanked his father for his permission. The tiger cub was also happy about the decision. Gilbert then inquired about the animal's wounds and then praised his son for his magnificent display of healing magic. Marie was still against the presence of such a dangerous monster at home, but still she could not disobey her father's decision. This girl promised to watch over her little brother because of his pet, for to her Zeke's safety was paramount. After the tiger cub settled with his master, Marie really kept an eye on the monster and constantly monitored his behavior, although the tiger himself did not show any hostility to humans. But the caring sister thought that this was just a deception, because in her opinion, no matter how cute the monster was, it was still a dangerous creature. Keeping a constant eye on the tiger cub was tedious, and Zeke decided to try to combine his magic with that of the monster. After getting rid of his older sister's attention, Zeke offered to start training, though the tiger cub didn't understand why there was such a rush. The young wizard explained that he had only recently been able to regain his magical powers, and now he wanted to work hard to develop his abilities. After all, he needed to become stronger as soon as possible to protect all his relatives. The little tiger was surprised by his master's desire to take care of his family, because he had never seen such a thing and had always met only very evil people. The little tiger was so surprised by his master's kindness that he immediately began to hug him and asked Zeke to smile more often. The young wizard promised his pet to fulfill his request, while his older sister watched everything that was going on. Mary thought her little brother was still the truest child and decided that he was treating the monster as his toy. Maury remembered how Gert had attacked her little brother and she was scared to leave Zeke unattended for long. But still she tried to think of good things, because she knew that thoughts could materialize and she just needed to keep an eye on Zeke. The tiger cub treated all people kindly, and when he saw Marie, he decided to play with her, but Zeke asked her not to do that and to go back. Late in the evening, Zeke felt tired, but the boy was very happy with how today had gone, and now he really wanted to sleep. Usually his sister came into the young wizard's room before bedtime, but today Mary broke that daily rule. Thinking that no one would disturb him, Zeke decided to try to practice a little magic and try to improve his abilities. But at that moment, Marie burst into the room and ordered him to sleep immediately. Zeke was surprised to see his older sister at such a late hour, as she was usually asleep, but for some reason she decided to come and check on him. The older sister complained of insomnia and wanted to be with her little brother, and that surprised Zeke. The girl asked for permission to lie down next to him, and the young wizard was so stunned that he didn't even know how to respond to such strange behavior of his sister. Marie hugged her little brother and fell asleep very quickly, and Zeke still didn't understand how it could have happened that now his sister didn't want to leave him even at night. Zeke remembered how he had rescued an injured tiger cub in the White Forest and then taken it home. Initially it was very scary that monster might hurt someone, but his fears were not realized. But now this little pet was sleeping with him, which meant that it would be very difficult to train alone and improve his magical abilities. Zeke really wanted to raise his level and become a real monster hunter, because that was the only way to become stronger. But now his stats were still low and he needed to raise them in order to practice magic spells. The young wizard decided to carefully leave the bed and practice, but the main thing in this was not to wake up anyone nearby. Zeke took advantage of the increase in speed and slipped out of his older sister's embrace, gaining long-awaited freedom. The boy was very happy with his success, as it was the first time he had used this ability and he didn't expect to succeed. All this meant a significant progress during his training in the White Forest, and now he had to continue to develop. But unexpectedly there was a tiger cub who immediately warned his master about how angry his sister would be if she noticed Zeke's absence. The young wizard promised that everything would be alright and he would be able to return to her awakening. And the tiger cub was to stay in the room and keep an eye on his sister. Zeke asked his pet to protect his big sister and then used the magic acceleration again to leave his room. The holy tiger cub, being alone with Mary, didn't want to sleep anymore, but at the same time he didn't want to stay and watch the sleeping girl. After a little thinking about everything that was happening, the tiger cub decided to leave the room and follow his master. Meanwhile, the young wizard was already in the White Forest and felt weak after several uses of acceleration. But he also realized that time was too short, and so he had to use every opportunity to become stronger. It was known that the amount of magical energy that could be used increased as the level increased, and now he needed to find out what his limit was. This time Zeke cast the ice block spell, and after a few seconds he marveled at the result. It was a real success, because now it was possible to use another magic technique, and Zeke decided to continue his training. This time the young wizard decided to use the Thunder Demon spell, but it didn't work out the way he had envisioned. Something terrible appeared ahead, some dark image that looked very much like Gert's older brother, and it caused Zeke to panic as well. The older brother looked like a vicious monster and Zeke didn't realize what was going on, but he still managed to attack the unknown enemy. The dark entity in the form of Gert counterattacked, and Zeke was so badly frightened that he started asking for it to stop immediately. But thanks to the repeated attack, the young wizard was able to get rid of the strange dark entity that resembled his older brother. Even after everything disappeared, Zeke could not calm down and he felt a real terror that completely consumed his mind. The young wizard's hands trembled and he felt incredibly weak, and then just fell to the ground and realized that it was too risky to use this magic. The assistant explained this condition by complete exhaustion, because Zeke had absolutely no magic power left, and so he fainted. And after such exhaustion, one had to regain strength. Zeke was shocked by his condition, because he realized that he wouldn't be able to keep his promise, and returned to the room before his older sister woke up. The young wizard blamed only himself for everything that had happened and realized how weak he was to use strong magic. Unexpectedly, Zeke was near his caring pet, and the tiger realized that his master was very scared. Zeke remembered that moment when he was near his mother, because even then he realized that he had a special power. But then his angry brother had appeared and blamed him for his mom's death. The young wizard was very scared at that moment and felt absolutely powerless, watching the white rabbits approaching him. All the inhabitants of the manor already knew about Zeke's disappearance and tried their best to find him, but no one knew where the young lord could have disappeared to. Maid Anna decided to check the right wing of the manor once more, while Theo decided to use the wind of nature to survey the nearby area. In Theo's opinion, it was necessary to increase the search radius, as Zeke couldn't have traveled far with his pet. Marie at this point was trying to figure out why her little brother had left the room without warning her. Marie even speculated that the tiger cub might have kidnapped her little brother, but just at that moment, the maids reported that a man had seen Zeke's pet. It was important information, but as the maids explained, the magical tiger cub had been spotted leaving the manor alone. The animal jumped out the window in the master's room and headed very quickly towards the White Forest. The maid at first thought that she had imagined it, because at this time everyone should be asleep, so she did not inform anyone. Marie still did not understand how this dangerous tiger could kidnap her little brother and decided to go to the White Forest to look for him. The girl ran forward so fast that she did not even pay attention to the requests to stop and be careful. After a few hundred meters towards the White Forest, the excited Marie saw a figure approaching in front of her. As it turned out, it was a small tiger cub slowly approaching and carrying Zeke on its back. Marie was surprised and frightened at the same time, for she could not understand how the little monster could carry her brother home. The twosome heard Zeke's faint breathing and realized that he was only unconscious, but didn't understand what she should do in this situation. Still, Mary was confident in her abilities and decided to definitely save her little brother and his pet. The girl immediately used healing magic, and in a few minutes Zeke woke up with a pleasant warmth. Marie was happy and couldn't hold back her tears, and the young wizard tried to find out what had happened to him. But his older sister kept hugging and talking about how much she was worried, and Zeke apologized for his stupid act. At that moment his father appeared nearby and began to look at his youngest son intently. Gilbert was pleased that his son was able to get out alive after his stupid night hike through the White Forest. Marie didn't understand why Zeke had gone on his own at night to a place where it was dangerous, but the boy explained that he had decided to do it on his own. His sister kept asking questions, but the young wizard couldn't tell the whole truth about his powers of higher magic, because that would make his family worry even more. Zeke couldn't think of what to say to his family, and his distraught father continued to ponder this difficult situation. In the end, Gilbert decided not to let his son's behavior go unpunished and put him under house arrest for 2 weeks. His father also decided to have someone assigned to Zeke so that he would always be under observation, and the young wizard of course agreed. Gilbert explained to his son that he was a special child and everyone had high expectations of him, and perhaps he had a good reason for leaving the house at night. The father suggested that Zeke wanted to hide something, but even if he did, he shouldn't worry about it. Gilbert reminded him that everyone in their family was strong, so Zeke shouldn't fight his fears alone and should rely on his relatives. Zeke was touched by his father's words, because his relatives were all really strong and could take care of themselves even without his help, and so he could not worry about them. The boy explained that he only wanted to practice magic and decided not to tell anyone about it so as not to bother anyone with his wishes. Zeke admitted that he wanted to become much stronger and learn how to defend himself from danger, because he was afraid to remain weak, and now he regretted his action. His father immediately reminded his son of what had happened to his mother, for he had to remember it always. But Marie asked him not to talk about it and promised her little brother that such a thing would never happen again. Gilbert hugged his distraught daughter and promised his children not to give them to anyone and to make sure they would always be alive. Lying in his bed, Zeke remembered the meeting with his father, and he was very ashamed of his tears, because his upset look was seen by absolutely everyone. But still, after such revelations it became much easier, and Zeke realized that he still wanted stronger, although everyone around him was very strong and responsive. The young wizard decided now to always share his fears, doubts, and worries with his relatives. Zeke was also very grateful to his pet who brought him from the White Forest, because if not for him, things could have been much worse, and the tiger cub would reply that he was only paying the debt for his rescue. Then the cunning pet asked to scratch his belly if Zeke was really grateful to him. The boy couldn't refuse and started playing with his new friend, and then he remembered that he never had time to name the holy tiger cub. It was not an easy task, and the young wizard explained to the tiger that he needed a name that he would respond to. After a little thought, Zeke decided to name his pet Hacky, and the tiger liked this name very much, because he began to hug and rub against his master. The young wizard considered the monster Hacky a great friend, and the tiger was happy to meet such a kind person. In the evening, Gilbert sat alone in his study and imagined talking to his dead wife. He talked about their young son, who remembered the days by his mom's side and often reminisced about them. Looking at a picture of Lyra, the head of the family, talked about how fast Zeke was growing up, and he was proving to be such a gifted child that had never been seen before in the history of the family. Gilbert had a lot more to say, but at that moment there was a knock on the room, and then Alberto and Willie entered, and the eldest son had something important to say about the White Forest. Gilbert praised his son and asked what results he had achieved. To begin with, Alberto recalled the magical ash that had been discovered a few months ago. Through research, they were able to find out that these ashes belonged to goblins, which meant that these emotions had somehow broken the barrier and penetrated the White Forest. Uncle Willie wondered who could be the person who had destroyed the rank B monster, though of course everyone present could guess the name of the blue hero on their own. Gilbert, after a little thought, still voiced the only true version and called the name of his youngest son Zeke. Gilbert remembered the moment when Theo came to report what had happened in the White Forest and hid her wound from everyone. Uncle Willie didn't understand how Theo, a strong sorceress and adventurer, could have been injured in the White Forest, since there were usually no dangerous monsters there. Alberto suggested that Theo was probably trying to protect Zeke, and Willie liked that idea. But Gilbert was still trying to figure out how exactly the youngest son was able to defeat the dangerous monsters. And if everything happened like that, then it was impossible to leave this situation unattended, and it was absolutely necessary to protect Theo. Alberto told about how some of the ashes scattered and reached even the center of the city. So among the adventurers began to spread rumors about the man who killed the monster rank B, but Alberto himself tried to spread the word that it was the first squad leader who did it. In this case was very helpful best friend Theo, who was with them in the forest. Nicola is a good man who can be trusted, and thanks to his generosity managed to keep everything secret. Uncle Willie praised the first squad leader and called Nicola a very responsible and loyal guy. Willie told how he had collected all the ashes to experiment on them and was about to create a new magic stone, and he needed the ashes as a valuable ingredient. Gilbert thanked him for his help and asked him to take care of Zeke. Alberto of course promised to do whatever was necessary for his little brother. Uncle Willie once again reminded him how different Zeke was from his brother Gert, whose character everyone knew about since childhood. But in any case, everything must be done to keep Zeke's abilities a secret, and everyone present agreed. Gilbert most of all wanted his youngest son to live a free life and not depend on any officials and greedy wizards. Looking at the photo of his beloved wife, Gilbert called it their joint wish, and therefore he must fulfill it. His father wanted to do everything for the sake of Zeke's peaceful life, and Willie inquired about the monster hunt, for then Gilbert himself had made a mistake. Gilbert had originally thought that Theo and Zeke were solely responsible, but as it turned out, everyone was a little to blame for what had happened. At the same time, the father had already begun to realize that his youngest son was no longer a child, and it was not just about magical abilities. Zeke had decided to go to the White Forest on his own despite his age, and it was amazing how fast he could get there. Willie suggested that it might have been because of a magic stone that could be used to teleport, but that stone was very expensive, so it was best to watch Zeke's actions now. Alberto reminded his father of his desire to watch Zeke in battle, but last time he failed to get home in time and missed the opportunity. Gilbert didn't immediately realize what he was talking about, but after thinking for a while, he remembered about the magic stone that was able to record and save what was happening. The father told his eldest son that he had indeed filmed Zeke covertly, and Alberto wanted to see the recording, while Willie remembered that he had heard something similar before. After a few minutes, everyone watched with interest how Zeke was using healing magic on the tape trying to help the tiger cub, and Alberto was most proud of his little brother's success. Uncle Willie, like everyone else, was watching carefully and kept asking his relatives to step aside and not interfere, and so it went on until nightfall. The next day, Zeke was very surprised when his relatives decided to teach him magic, and Uncle Willie advised him to show all his strong magical qualities. Willie talked about how he had taught magic to all the older children in the family except Gert, and that was why Zeke shouldn't expect an easy ride from a strict teacher. But the young wizard was happy at this moment and thanked his uncle for the honor, for he had never even dreamed of a better teacher. Willie was pleased with Zeke's motivation and advised him to prepare for very hard work, because magic doesn't like lazy people. Zeke, of course, was eager for this training and had already had time to study all of Uncle Willie's characteristics with his evaluation eye. This man was incredibly strong and possessed a level 60. Willie also had 3 higher and 5 lower magic attributes at his disposal, as well as an unknown wind spirit friend. Zeke studied every parameter of his teacher with interest, and it turned out Willie had a wide variety of abilities and skills and could wield any weapon. Zeke was impressed with his uncle's characteristics and decided that all enemies should be afraid of such a strong and brave man. The young wizard was pleased that his uncle would become his teacher, and perhaps in the future he would have access to higher magic. But for now he would have to try his best. The most interesting thing in Uncle Zeke's characteristics was a strange parameter called Wind Spirit, because he had nothing like it. Meanwhile, Willie was scrutinizing his future student, who had great potential, and it remained to be seen what would come of it. Willie decided that Zeke couldn't use teleportation magic yet, but despite this, his magic power was much higher than expected, and one day he would be the strongest wizard in the family. Willie thought Zeke was a very interesting kid who would be fun to learn magical secrets with, as well as help him learn new complex spells. At that moment, Hacky appeared nearby, who had already managed to tear a piece off the highest branch somewhere and was now waiting for praise from his master like an ordinary kitten. Willie immediately recognized the monster he had seen on the tape and whom Zeke had rescued in the White Forest. The young wizard confirmed this by petting the tiger cub. Zeke named his pet Hacky, and the tiger cub himself greeted Willie and called him the man with the red head. All this interested the uncle, and he decided to study the little monster. Willie was very surprised at the characteristics available to the tiger and noticed its snow-white fur, which he had never seen before. Willie praised Hacky and called his attributes of lightning and ice a great combination. The tiger cub decided at that moment that he had a good man in front of him. Zeke was happy with the result of his uncle and Hacky's interaction, because he had tried to hide all the monster's strong abilities beforehand. But Willie was still able to notice a strange current of magical power in the tiger. Willie asked permission to touch Hacky, and of course the tiger didn't mind. Uncle noticed the residual marks and Zeke started to worry at this point. Willie had detected residual magic that had come from a strong spell, and so if it wasn't fixed now, the flow of magic in the tiger's body might stop. Zeke believed that his sister had cured Hacky, but Willie stated that it wasn't enough and something stronger than normal magical healing was needed. Willie quickly found out that the little monster was under a powerful curse, the effects of which did not wear off even after healing magic. Zeke used his evaluation eye to find the curse on the tiger cub and didn't understand how he couldn't notice it before. The young wizard apologized to Hacky for this mistake, but Willie advised him not to blame himself, because such a complex curse was difficult to notice even for an adult. Uncle Willie sensed a very unpleasant aura from the little monster, which was of unknown origin. Willie then asked for permission to take some of the tiger's fur, for he needed to find those who had created such a powerful curse and punish those treacherous people. Because of this curse, Hacky could not use magic, and Zeke asked if there was any way to fix the tiger cub's condition. Uncle Willie explained that everything could be fixed with magical cleansing, but only he wasn't too strong in that magic. Zeke realized that he needed higher magic, which he hadn't learned yet, and it would take a long time to learn, and now he needed to help the tiger as soon as possible. The wizard remembered the words of his favorite father, who advised him to always rely on his family for help and not to be afraid to tell the truth. Zeke decided to follow his father's advice and decided to tell Uncle Willie something very important that could help solve the problem. Marie was very worried about the little tiger cub and of course wanted to help him get rid of the curse. Uncle Willie had heard about the girl's recent training in purification magic and maybe she could help the tiger cub. But Marie wasn't sure of her abilities. The thing was that the girl had a small reserve of magical energy and couldn't help. But Uncle Willie advised not to worry, as it was rare for someone to be able to use this magic at her young age. But still the girl really wanted to help and save the little pet, and so she offered to use the magic stone. As it turned out, Marie possessed a magical cleansing stone that her mother had given her long before she died. Marie told how she had only been able to use light magic before, but had tried her best to master the purification magic. She had to train hard and long for that, but when the first successes appeared it was too late. At that moment, Mom's condition had already deteriorated a lot and it was impossible to help her even with the help of strong purification magic. But when Mom gave birth to Zeke, she immediately felt much better. Marie explained that this magic stone contained purification magic and she had specially kept it for a special occasion. And now thanks to this magical power it would be possible to save Hacky, ridding him of the terrible curse. But Zeke noticed the condition of the pet and Hacky decided not to use the magic stone for himself, because this thing means a lot to Marie, and is a gift from his mom. Marie did not understand what was going on, and the young wizard explained that in fact the tiger cub did not want her to sacrifice an expensive gift to save him. The girl was touched by such a noble desire of the tiger cub and explained to him that actually she always wanted to ask for his forgiveness. Marie apologized for her behavior and for doubting him, because now Hacky has become a real family member for them, and so she wants to help him get rid of the curse. Hacky believed the girl's sincere words and no longer doubted who he was considered to be in this family, and then decided to accept Mary's help. The girl activated the magic stone very quickly and enveloped the little monster with a magical light of purification. Hacky was delighted with the healing effect and felt a magical warmth that felt like it released him from a strong heaviness. Uncle Willie confirmed that Hacky's magic flow was indeed restored now, and Zeke thanked his big sister for this help. Willie then asked Hacky to try to use his magic and suggested that he start by making a small snowfall. With a few movements of his paw, the little tiger cub was able to activate his magic abilities and white snow began to fall on him from above. Everyone was delighted by such a magnificent performance and it looked as if they were in a white forest in the middle of a snowfall. Hacky was having fun tumbling around in the snow and was happy that he could use his magic now. And Zeke offered to make a huge snowman together. Hacky didn't know what that was and the young wizard started to show how to do it by shoveling snow with his hands. But Marie advised not to do it with her bare hands and offered to take gloves. Everyone was very happy and had fun playing with the snow, and Uncle Willie enjoyed the children's laughter, which always gave him pleasure. And then the kind uncle decided to postpone today's lesson to the next day, and it was all done in honor of Hacky's recovery. Meanwhile, a girl whom no one noticed was watching them. She really wanted to be together with everyone too and also have fun playing with Zeke. who she already knew a lot about. Zeke and Hacky decided to play a game using magic shots to make holes in the dense snow, while making sure that the snow itself didn't melt. Happy with the results of the magic shooting, as Zeke and Hacky were doing a great job with the magic fire. And now it was obvious that the tiger cub was good at using magic. The young wizard happily hugged his furry friend and told him that together they were able to accomplish today's task perfectly. Then Uncle Will decided to meet with his brother and advised his nephew to practice a little more magic with his friend. Before leaving Zeke alone with Hacky, Uncle Willie watched the little nephew carefully and was pleased with his results. Soon after, Willie met up with his brother Gilbert and told him how he had just gotten back from training, and so he hadn't waited too long in this room. The father, of course, inquired about his son's results, and Willie called Zeke a very talented and capable kid who was doing great. Willie explained how over the course of several months he has been carefully observing Zeke and has noticed his incredibly developed drive. And even when he sees some complicated spell, he immediately tries to repeat it. Most of all, the uncle was struck by his nephew's ability to use the skill of imagination, thanks to which the young wizard created the most incredible projects. Willie explained to his brother how he sometimes looked into his nephew's head, but Gilbert asked him not to do that, because Zeke was not some guinea pig. For the moment, Zeke had been given a task to improve his control of magic, and if he was good at it, then the child could be released into the outside world. Gilbert was pleased with his youngest son's progress, and Willie told of his observations of Hacky's little pet, and this tiger cub has the attributes of ice lightning. The brothers were surprised by the animal's abilities and agreed that there is a lot of interesting things going on around Zeke all the time, and there is never a dull moment with him. Willie suggested that earlier the little tiger cub had been caught by poachers and had gone through a lot of suffering, and Gilbert didn't like it very much. There were rumors that the Empire held secret auctions for such rare creatures, and so Gilbert spent a great deal of time to strengthen border security in his territory. Willie also told of a special tracking magic that had been placed on the little tiger cub, but he had managed to remove it and leave it in the Forest of Silence. Everything indicated that the insidious poachers were very eager to get their hands on this small and rare monster, and it would be interesting to watch its development in the future. Gilbert was still more interested in the safety of his territory and of course his family, and asked his brother to pay more attention to it. But Uncle Willie decided that Hacky would not be attacked again, although it was necessary to fasten a special magical family talisman on the little tiger as a last resort. Willie asked his brother about the design, for he wanted to make the talisman just the way Hacky would like it. Gilbert immediately realized how much his brother liked Hacky. Willie called Hacky a very sweet and docile animal who loved people and was wonderful to have him in the family. Gilbert replied that his brother was very much in love with the family as always. Willie didn't see that as a big deal, since his brother also loved his family very much, but Gilbert immediately replied that it wasn't really true. Gilbert then laid out on the table a huge number of all kinds of letters and explained to his surprised brother that all these love letters were addressed just for Willie. Gilbert, of course, knew how popular his brother was and asked him to do whatever it took to make sure those letters didn't come to him anymore, but to Willie himself. Gilbert promised his brother he would send him to the magic squad if he didn't want to start a family, but Willie was certainly against the idea, but he couldn't give up his popularity. After a while, Zeke was still in the forest, still practicing his magic, and he was a little frustrated, because this time he couldn't do it right. As it turned out, it was very difficult to control his magic power. Zeke could easily create various elements with magic, but he couldn't keep them stable. The young wizard really wanted to learn how to create glass stones, because if he could do that, then he could start studying higher magic. Zeke asked his sister if her magic stone could be reused, but the girl explained that it was now just an ordinary glass stone. Marie explained that the magic stone was only called that because of the magical power put into an ordinary glass stone, and this stone had sacred magic in it, and that's why the stone was called sacred. Zeke immediately assumed that if some other magic was put back into this stone, it could be used again. Mary confirmed this, for in this way it was possible to put in any magic even the magic one didn't possess. This kind of glass stone is especially strong, and so it can even withstand the infusion of higher magic and is a universal vessel. Mary's brother can have this stone if he so desires. Zeke realized at this moment that if he created more stones like this, he would be able to use not only one higher magic but any other magic. This was a great solution in case the body's magical powers would be exhausted, and thanks to such a stone, one could fight in a critical situation. Zeke also decided to add magic sand to such a stone. Then the young wizard concentrated his magic powers as much as possible and tried to create a glass stone. But as soon as the glass magic stone took its shape, Zeke lost control of his magic and nothing worked. All this greatly disappointed the young wizard, and he didn't understand what exactly he was doing wrong. And the magic counselor suggested that perhaps the sand used was not suitable for this purpose. Zeke didn't think about it, because this sand was given to him by Uncle Willie for practicing magic control, so this magic sand must be good. The assistant, after studying the sand, called it a very good sand of level. However, it doesn't match this stone since it's level S, and therein lies the problem. Therefore, it is necessary to find S-level magic sand to match it. Zeke agreed with this observation, but he didn't know where to find the matching sand. The magical assistant advised to gather such sand in the Forest of Silence, although one could find a more convenient option for this purpose. According to the magical assistant, such sand could be easily found in the Forest of Spirits, but Zeke didn't know anything about this place and asked for more information. According to the assistant, the soil in this forest was very fertile and had excellent magical sand in it. Zeke didn't know how to get there, but the assistant offered his services as a guide. Then the magical helper offered to immediately go searching in the Forest of Spirits, but Zeke was not ready for that, and then felt a very strong wind. At that moment, an unfamiliar female voice was heard, and an unfamiliar girl joyfully announced that she had finally found Zeke. The young wizard was surprised at the appearance of a young and beautiful and completely unfamiliar girl who knew him from somewhere. The girl immediately started hugging the young wizard as if she had known him for years, but Zeke tried to break free from the embrace and find out who exactly this girl was. The strange lady talked about how she had heard a lot about the guy, and after she was allowed to, she immediately went to him. All of this only caused Zeke to wonder, and he didn't understand a thing. Hacky immediately decided to help his master and climbed on the girl's head and demanded that she immediately let Zeke go. But the lady knew about the tiger and was not surprised at his appearance. The stranger then called Hacky the real sacred white tiger, though of course she knew how carefully this information was kept hidden. Hacky asked not to tell anyone about it, and the girl realized that not even Willie knew about it and promised to fulfill the white tiger's request. Zeke was puzzled how this noisy stranger knew so many details about him, because they had never met her before and it was all strange. But at that moment Uncle Willie appeared in the room, girls, not to mislead his favorite nephew with his words. Immediately Uncle Willie, with a quick movement of his hand, was able to release Zeke from his embrace and threw the girl aside. The mysterious stranger was immediately upset, for she had been prevented from rejoicing at that moment. Willie apologized for his acquaintance disturbing Zeke, and then his uncle suggested that Zeke should meet the spirit Frau, for that was the name of this noisy and cheerful girl. As it turned out, she had a special magical agreement with Willie, and now Zeke understood the meaning of the strange characteristic of his uncle. Willie advised not to be afraid of Frau's spirit and told how there used to be hostile relations between people and spirits, but this particular spirit girl was very kind to people. Frau immediately explained that she was only kind to the people she liked, and of course she wasn't going to hurt anyone in this family, and especially not little Zeke. The young wizard was incredibly surprised and was now beginning to understand exactly how the strange girl was able to see the concealment magic on Hacky. Willie was amazed that his nephew was able to see Frau's spirit, for a normal person would not have been able to do that. Then his uncle asked him not to tell anyone about this girl, and Zeke promised to honor that request. Frau continued to look at the young wizard with interest and then asked if it was really the first time he had seen the spirit. Zeke called Frau his first spirit in his life. These words of the young lad made the girl blush, where she was pleased to be Zeke's first in her life. But the young wizard continued to be suspicious of Frau. Then the girl promised to always protect Zeke, because if Willie takes care of him, she will always be there to help. Frau called the young wizard very interesting, and that's why she had such a great curiosity. The girl didn't understand why he was still a child. After all, his mind was already an adult. Willie reminded Frau that he only allowed her to get acquainted with his nephew, but not to bother him. The girl immediately took offense and explained that she only wanted to scrutinize Zeke. Zeke asked his uncle what the problem was, but Willie explained that Frau just didn't understand what personal space was, and that was why she was so annoying. Frau's spirit tried to explain that it was very rare for her to be able to socialize with people in this way, and it had been a long time since she had been out on the town, and so she was curious about everything. But Willie had decided that the girl would stand out a lot among people. Zeke was in agreement with his uncle and promised the girl to tell her something else interesting later. Frau's spirit was pleased with this meeting, and she decided to honor her good mood by giving the young wizard what he wanted. These words surprised the boy very much, but he became curious. The cheerful girl, of course, decided to give her new friend the very magical sand that he needed right now. Zeke was very happy, but as it turned out now, Frau did not have this sand, but she promised to find it. Then the girl explained to Willie that Zeke was very strong and the sand he had been given was not suitable for him. For training, of course, this sand is fine, but Zeke wants to make a beautiful glass stone and he needs a better material. The young wizard confirmed his desire to make a good quality magic stone. Uncle Willie looked carefully at the results of his nephew's labors, but then after a little thinking explained that it would not be possible to give him good magic sand at once. The fact was that Willie had a very important experiment to perform soon, and he could not leave such important work unattended. So now he must get back to work and even stop Zeke's training for a while. His uncle apologized to the young wizard, but Zeke certainly didn't mind, for he understood how much work Willie had to do. Although where his favorite uncle worked there were a lot of interesting materials. Frau decided to help Zeke, but Willie forbade it, because ordinary people might be frightened by her appearance. And even if Frau will be in the image of a normal person, she cannot act alone, because she is not good at restraining herself. The girl, of course, was against it and wanted to please Zeke very much. As a result, the young wizard decided to go to the magic group on his own and solve all his problems without bothering anyone. Uncle Willie was surprised by his nephew's desire, but Zeke decided to follow his ambition and see the magic group with his own eyes. Spirit Frau was delighted by the young wizard's courage, for this was his first outing. Uncle Willie decided not to forbid his nephew, but still promised to worry about him. Willie was confident in Zeke's abilities and allowed him to act on his own. All this pleased the young wizard, who was eager to develop. In fact, Zeke had long been interested in various magical experiments that were conducted in the magic group, and now he had a chance to see everything for himself. Hacky, of course, wanted to go with his favorite master, but Uncle Willie advised not to do it, because the tiger was a very rare creature, and the lab technicians will not leave him alone. Willie's arguments were undeniable and Zeke agreed with them, and Hacky decided to stay at home and wait for his master's return. Uncle Willie promised to tell Gilbert and asked Zeke to be careful while traveling. The boy was determined and promised not to upset his favorite uncle. Marie was worried about her little brother as usual, but Zeke promised that everything would be alright, because he was traveling in a wagon and would eventually meet his uncle, and so he would be alright. The older sister, holding Hacky in her arms, advised Zeke to be very careful, because danger could be around every corner. And Theo praised her brother for his determination and courage and wished him a good trip, for he had to do it sometime. A few minutes later, the butler Hans reported that everything was ready for the journey to begin, and an excited Zeke said goodbye to his relatives and promised to return soon. The joyful young wizard ran not only to his wagon, but also towards new adventures and impressions, for he had long since felt like an adult. Zeke during the journey was looking forward to his arrival in the capital, and Hans certainly understood the emotions of the young wizard. Video had never been in this magnificent city before. The butler then recalled the exciting moment when he and Theo had hunted the monster together, but then called it confidential information, and Zeke thanked him for his understanding. And then Hans told that the third magical order, headed by Master Werewolf, consists of the real elite, successful in both military and civil affairs. These people conduct research in the fields of magic, monsters, and magical beasts. Hans apologized again for being too talkative, and then suggested that by now they could already see the great capital of the empire from afar. This was indeed true, and when Zeke looked out the window he marveled at the huge glittering city that was growing larger by the second. Hans told him that the magic building was located on the west side of the capital, and that the main research center was hidden in a completely different place. The butler decided that this information would be of no interest to the young wizard, because no one likes to conduct experiments with horrible monsters. But Zeke wanted to see his uncle as soon as possible. Hans constantly told something, and when he realized that he said something unnecessary, he asked Zeke not to tell anyone about it and began to laugh loudly. Soon the young wizard found himself in the magic building, and the faithful Hans was upset, for he was not allowed inside. The girl explained that only Mr. Zeke could go in, and that was the rule. Anna and Hans wanted to go with their young master, for they had to take care of him. But the butler decided not to resist and reassured the maid, promising her that Zeke would be fine. But Anna didn't want to agree and accept such stupid conditions. In the end, Zeke advised the maid not to worry and offered her to rest in the capital until his return. Zeke was a little frightened by the strange girl who accompanied him, but she kept reminding him that he was in no danger here. The young wizard was not worried and just wanted to get to the research center as soon as possible and find out what experiments were going on there. Then the stern girl advised him to watch his feet carefully, for they would have to overcome a poorly lighted area. Zeke was very frightened, and when the girl went forward and did not wait for him, the young wizard had no choice but to run after her. Soon the frightened boy found himself in front of a huge magical dark door, and now he was really very scared, because he had no idea what could hide behind it. After crossing the long dark corridor, Zeke felt a great excitement and was looking forward to find out more about this mysterious place. The girl meanwhile carefully activated the magic crystal. The huge dark door slowly began to open, and after a few seconds Zeke was blinded by an incredibly bright white light that burst through the darkness. Before the eyes of the enraptured wizard, an incredible picture opened up. It was a real city under a huge tree, and it was the very same research center. This place was much bigger than Zeke had envisioned, for there were separate large buildings and an incredibly huge tree. And from this tree a real waterfall was pouring down. The curious wizard asked the girl what exactly was flowing from this huge tree, and if it was some kind of strange sap. The girl was speechless and only nodded in response, and Zeke told how he had read about the special uses of this sap. It's used in the creation of magical tools, and it's also used to make medicine. Everything indicated that this tree was unique and very important to this place, but the girl didn't comment on Zeke's assumption in any way. The young wizard apologized for his talkativeness, explaining that he just likes to learn everything new in this world. Eventually, the girl broke the silence and named the tree Armida. The silent lady then talked about how it was, and even now it is still growing. And the sap of this unique huge tree has a high scientific center, and researchers use it to create various magical tools, medicines, and vitamins. Therefore, Amrita tree is of special importance to everyone, and the waste that is produced during research is used as fertilizer. The researchers study the tree every day and check its condition. Zeke was fascinated by this information and gradually began to realize what this place was all about. The research center and the magic tree lived in symbiosis and depended on each other. The girl confirmed and called it all a mutually beneficial cooperation. Stepping inside the research center, Zeke noticed how beautiful the place was. But the other girl didn't want to waste time and pointed to the blue door, behind which was the head of the center. Then to Zeke's surprise, the girl decided to leave him and once again reminded him where he needed to go. But the young wizard wanted to talk some more and learn a lot more. The girl still allowed the guest to take his time and look around if he wanted to. Zeke, watching the stranger, decided that she too was very fond of magical research. Once outside the door, the young wizard saw a huge number of lab technicians who were engaged in responsible work. And then he heard a familiar voice. Zeke was very happy to meet his favorite uncle and tried to ask about Frau's spirit, but gestured against it. Willie then quietly explained that he had to leave the spirit elsewhere, and Frau could be seen here. But the girl asked him to tell Zeke that she was very much looking forward to their next meeting, and this did not surprise the young wizard at all, for he remembered how Frau had hugged him. Then Uncle Willie pointed to a huge magical stone that caught his nephew's attention and explained that it was a new teleportation stone. Ordinary transition stones tend to only connect to one place, but the research center is now developing a stone that can connect several places at once. And with this discovery, anything can be transmitted to any place. The main formula was already ready, and now experiments were conducted, thanks to which it was necessary to find out whether it is possible to send something to the set coordinates. And so there was a lot of work to be done to finalize this project. It all sounded very complicated, but Zeke liked it. Willie called this project in the most promising, because thanks to the teleportation stone it would be possible not to use carriages. Then his uncle decided to show his nephew the other departments responsible for magic and magic tools, and even the huge tree outside. Zeke was excited about it and eager to learn new things, and it made Willie laugh. Then suddenly the huge room was filled with bright light, and everyone felt the influence of the strongest magic power. No one understood what was happening, but something strange was happening to the magic stone. Every second the pressure of the magic stone increased, and Willie demanded that the teleportation device be shut down immediately. And Zeke at this moment began to lose consciousness. In a few seconds the young wizard felt a terrible emptiness and saw only darkness in front of him. The guy did not understand anything, and he was scared. Gradually the darkness began to dissipate, and Zeke found himself in some half-destroyed room, where at first glance there was no one. The young wizard tried to understand where he was, and then suddenly he heard the voice of his favorite Uncle Willie. As it turned out, Zeke had teleported, and Willie was very pleased that Zeke was not hurt, but still asked him how he felt. Uncle suggested that they were most likely in some kind of dungeon, and from a preliminary assessment, it could be said to be a normal low-level dungeon. But Willie didn't understand why they had teleported to this particular place, and perhaps it was because of an error in the formula. But still, Willie decided that there couldn't be such a huge mistake and maybe someone had interfered with the process. Zeke was excited, and Willie explained that he was just thinking and trying to understand the reason for this forced teleportation. But he didn't understand how it happened yet. His uncle said that the dungeon coordinates were not written in the magic stone, but for some unknown reason the coordinates had changed and now they needed to find a way to get out of the dungeon. Zeke asked if they could teleport back, but Willie explained that it was impossible because there were many different restrictions in the dungeon space. All the dungeons are scattered around the world, and going into them you can see different spaces, from meadows to snowy mountains. No one knows if this is an illusion or reality, but everyone is trying to do research. It has been known that teleportation is forbidden in dungeons and they work as a trap. But usually in the depths of the dungeon, you can find something that can change the fate of the entire world. These mysterious artifacts are so enigmatic that researchers all over the world speculate about the existence of other worlds. Willie described the dungeons as places where danger could await at every turn. But if you could get to the end, you could open the curtain of mystery. Zeke was fascinated by the story and decided that there was an artifact here. Willie advised him not to get his hopes up, though, because there might be signs that the dungeon had been cleaned out long ago, which meant it was safe. The young wizard still didn't understand how exactly such an unexpected teleportation had happened and decided that it might have been due to his skill. Uncle Willie explained that in order to get to the exit they would have to go upstairs, but if there was a boss here, they would defeat it and go down. Willie asked his favorite nephew if he wanted to defeat the local boss by himself and gain a huge amount of experience that couldn't be gained on the surface. Zeke thought about it, and Willie called it a good opportunity to demonstrate the progress of his skills. Especially the experience of a real fight doesn't compare to a practice fight. The young wizard certainly agreed with his uncle, but he was not sure that he could defeat a real boss, especially in a dungeon. Uncle Willie told him that the local boss was most likely the king of the Red Blade and was of the B rank. But that only made Zeke even more excited. Zeke realized that he had only fought with a B-rank goblin general before, but now fighting alone was a bit scary for him. Still, he didn't want to lose such a unique opportunity to gain experience, and Uncle Willie expressed his confidence in Zeke's victory. The young wizard thought that maybe his uncle knew about his victory over the goblin general, and that was why he was sure of his victory. Willie also explained that this dungeon was not too scary, and that Zeke could escape at any moment to the floor below, where he would be waiting for him, and therefore it was worth trying to meet the boss. Then suddenly a frightened voice of a girl was heard and Zeke didn't understand how it was possible. And Willie decided that perhaps it was an indicator of the start of the boss battle, but still it was strange. The young wizard of course wanted to immediately go to rescue the unknown girl, and ran forward, but his uncle asked him not to hurry. In the end, the two of them moved forward and found a bound girl with animal ears. The sight surprised not only Zeke but Uncle Willie as well. All this was the boss's place, and the only thing left to do was to defeat him and save the girl. So Uncle Willie suggested that Zeke show the results of his grueling training. Zeke saw two charcoal spiders of enormous size in front of him, and these monsters belonged to the element of earth. The monsters immediately attacked the non-zone guests with shots of their webs, and it was an unpleasant surprise for the young wizard. But Uncle Willie quickly grabbed his nephew and saved him from being hit by the sticky substance. Willie immediately explained to Zeke that coal spiders have weaknesses in their eyes and legs, and so you just have to aim well, as he had done in his training. But Zeke, he must realize that there was much more danger in the word now. The young wizard was ready, and he wanted to succeed as soon as possible. It was known that the body of coal spiders essentially resembled a hard stone, and so it was necessary to hit its weak point accurately. Zeke started to move very quickly and then used wind magic and wind blades to tear the huge spider into many pieces. Uncle Willie praised his student for the perfect result, but at that moment Zeke saw the enemy behind his relative. Willie was a very experienced and strong warrior, and so he managed to react in time to the attack of the huge spider. With a lightning-fast movement of his blade, Willie destroyed the monster without giving it a single chance and recorded another victory on his account. Willie apologized to his nephew for destroying his training target, but Zeke only laughed in response. The boy realized that for someone as strong as his uncle, monsters like that were easy prey. Then Willie offered to work on rescuing the survivors who were still in the cocoons of the web and cut a huge thread with his sword. The multitude of cocoons connected by a single thread instantly began to fall and crumble. Zeke immediately saw a girl begin to fall out of one cocoon. The young wizard managed to catch the girl in time, who didn't realize what was happening and who was standing in front of her. Immediately after that, the next cocoons began to fall out. A huge bald man pal with the girl Emma in his arms was able to get out of the trap, and he was happy to see the first girl who got out. Emma immediately rushed to her mistress Daya, and Pal was anything but happy that they were still alive after such a horrible monster attack. Emma and Daya were very worried, but were now very happy to see each other all right. But then Emma saw Daya's ears, and all the friends realized that a special magical tool that masked her appearance had broken during the attack. Zeke looked in amazement at the rescued people who were discussing the little girl's appearance and didn't understand why they were so negative about her strange ears. Eventually, the young wizard offered to take his cloak so that the frightened girl could hide her unusual ears, and this surprised the huge Paula. Willie immediately intervened in the conversation and explained that he and his nephew were passing by, and then decided to find out who they had found in the coal spider trap. Pal recognized Willie's clothes, which belonged to a group of MANHWA mages, and it even surprised the wizard a little. Daya called Willie and Zeke his saviors, and Pal thanked the strangers for their help. But Willie immediately explained that his little relative had done it all and he was just helping. The bald, bulky man was surprised at the little guy's bravery and thanked him for his courage, then turned his attention to the two other rescued people and suggested that he check the rest of the cocoons. But Uncle Willie was skeptical, for there was a very unpleasant sight in the remaining cocoons. No one else was alive, and Willie explained that anything that dies inside the dungeon decomposes in a few hours, and humans are no exception to this rule. In addition, the cocoons of coal spiders suck the life force from their victims, and as a result, those they capture die an almost immediate and painful death. Fallen to take the dead warrior's equipment and bring it home. Willie agreed with this decision, as it was the only thing they could do. Daya was saddened by the death of the loyal knights who had always served their country, but for her sake they were willing to give their lives did it. Zeke regretted not being able to come to the rescue sooner, for then the knights could have stayed alive. But Daya asked the boy to blame himself, for all those warriors were willing to die. The young wizard saw how much the girl was upset, and so he offered her to eat some delicious sweets that he had brought with him from home. Zeke said that these sweets were prepared by his favorite cook and they were so wonderful that Daya would feel better. But the girl was also too hungry and only out of politeness decided to accept the offer. Taking a small bite from a very delicious smelling candy, the girl was delighted by the incredible flavor she had never experienced before. Zeke was very happy and offered the girl to take some more of the delicious candy, but Daya refused, for she did not want to take advantage of someone else's kindness. Then Pal appeared and reported that he had collected the equipment of the dead knights, and the wizard Willie was setting up a magic tent. So as soon as the surviving knights woke up, they could discuss everything. Zeke was surprised at his uncle's abilities and didn't even know he had a magic tent with him, and Daya didn't know how to thank him for such incredible help. The girl thanked the young wizard for his kindness and very tasty sweets, and then apologized for not having time to introduce herself. The girl called herself Diana von Estania and explained that she was the third princess of the kingdom of Estania. The young wizard, of course, did not expect to hear anything like that and did not even realize that there was a real princess in front of him all this time. Meanwhile, Willie surveyed the area and saw traces of applied protective magic on the debris. That's why they didn't notice anything despite the fact that the battle was very close. It all looked too mysterious for the suspicious Willie, and he wanted to find out all the details of what had happened here. Meanwhile, the two knights named Camel and Daniela woke up, and despite their long unconsciousness, they felt fine. Daya introduced her maid Emma Granger, and both girls thanked the knights for their help. Pal for Barshmut also introduced himself and called himself an earl, though he immediately explained that he didn't look like an aristocrat at all. Diana called Pal the man she relied on in the most difficult situations and trusted him completely. The bald, bulky man admitted that he'd heard of Will and knew his nickname was the Scarlet Wizard. And Willie knew that the Pal family raised very skillful knights. Pal began to guess Willie's affiliation immediately after seeing his red hair color, but after seeing his family crest, he was finally convinced. Diane was very surprised to learn that Willie belonged to the Able family, for she had also heard a lot about that family. Willie apologized for not introducing himself right away, and called himself the third vice commander of the magical order of the Mangasta Kingdom, and why she decided to introduce her nephew. After everyone finished giving their names, it was necessary to find out how they ended up in the dungeon. But as it turned out, no one knew the true reason, and everything happened because of a malfunction in the teleportation stone. And right after they got into the dungeon, they were attacked by coal spiders and very quickly wrapped in cocoons. Zeke realized that these people had the same story, and Pal explained that if the princess suddenly went missing, it would be a disaster for the entire kingdom, so it was necessary to get her back to the surface alive and unharmed as soon as possible. Pal asked Willie to use his power and help them, because he is a very powerful wizard from the House of Abel. Zeke offered to cooperate with these people, because they had the same goal and together it would be much easier to get out of the dungeon. Willie was not at all surprised at this reaction from his nephew. Willie of course wanted to agree to all the proposals at once, but first he decided to set some conditions for future cooperation. First of all, no one was to know that Zeke was in this dungeon, and to make sure that no one would know about it, everyone would have to sign a contract on a scroll of oaths. Camel was outraged at such a suggestion, and Zeke didn't understand what kind of contract they were talking about or why it caused such a reaction from the knight. Camel explained that among all magical contracts, the oath scroll is the one that cannot be broken under any circumstances. With this scroll, one can specify any punishment for the one who breaks the contract and there are no limits. One can even kill a person with the help of this contract, and that's why making such deals has such a negative reaction. Zeke was shocked as he didn't even expect such a difficulty. Camel called this contract unacceptable, because it would jeopardize the life of Princess Diana. Willie realized how dangerous it looked, but explained that if no one accepted these conditions, he would not help anyone to get out of the dungeon. The wizard explained that he had to make sure by all means that other people did not find out about Zeke, and he did not care about anything but that and not even the fate of the princess. Princess Diana listened intently to the conversation between the wizard and the knight, and then declared that Mr. Zeke was the jewel of her generation. The young wizard was surprised to hear such a thing, and Uncle Willie reminded his nephew that he was actually a very special child and should always know that. Willie called his nephew a special person to the Adele family who is destined to fulfill a special task. Zeke decided that his uncle was not only talking about his unusual magical abilities and wanted to say something else very important, but perhaps now was not the right time. In the end, Princess Diana agreed to the contract, even though the terms were one-sided and unfair in her opinion. The young wizard agreed and asked the princess if she had any secrets for him to make a similar contract with her too. The girl decided that it wasn't necessary, as the two of them couldn't be the only ones not taking risks. Zeke still disagreed and insisted that he and the princess become comrades together and keep each other's secrets. The princess didn't argue and began to slowly remove her hood. In the end, Diana asked not to tell anyone about her unusual ears. Such a unique appearance greatly surprised Camel and Daniela. Willie decided that the girl had had such an appearance since birth, and it was indeed true. Diana said that such ears happened to people whose ancestors mixed their blood, and sometimes people with such peculiarities are born in such families. But only there is nothing good or special about it, especially when you are a member of the royal family. Zeke realized at this moment that there was a strong discrimination against such people in this world. Diana talked about how she usually hides her appearance with a magical tool, but during the spider attack it broke and now everyone sees her feature. Therefore, under no circumstances should anyone be allowed to know about her main secret, because it is unacceptable for a half-breed to be in power. Diana stated that no one should reveal her secret until she herself makes a public statement, and that is her condition for the contract. The young wizard immediately agreed to such terms and asked Uncle Willie if he would accept the offer. Willie pondered the decision and Zeke promised to never do anything to upset Mrs. Diana or her family. Willie was not at all surprised by his nephew's decision and decided to change some of the terms during the contract, for he did not want to risk Zeke's life. Therefore, the punishment of death was replaced by memory erasure. Princess Diana was satisfied with the result of the negotiations and thanked the young wizard for his bravery and responsiveness. After that, everyone present got ready to conclude the magic contract, and Uncle Willie began to activate a special scroll. After a few minutes, the magic contract among all present was concluded, and Willie reminded how important it was to keep each other's secrets. Camel was still not happy, for if it wasn't for the princess he would never have agreed to such terms, and Pal was now hoping for help from the wizards. Willie promised to get everyone out of this dungeon, for he was pleased with the way everyone had signed the magic contract, and Pal was happy to cooperate for the princess' sake. The young wizard promised Princess Diana help, for he was sure that they could all get out alive from this terrible dungeon, and the girl believed the guy's words. While Diana and Dick were chatting sweetly, Uncle Willie was thinking about another problem. After all, thanks to this magic contract, he was able to take some measures that he didn't tell his nephew about. In order to protect Zeke from an unreliable ally, Wizard Willie decided to act much tougher and more decisive. The wreckage of the magic stone with the traces of protective magic kept him on his toes, for it was obvious that the magic had been applied to the stone after the people had been in the dungeon. It was as if someone had put up a barrier so that no one could help the princess. Willie realized that if his assumption was correct, then he would have to face another problem until they got out of the dungeon. Everything pointed to the fact that among the surviving people there was a real traitor who wanted Princess Diana dead. But who exactly it was still unknown. Despite the problems, Willie was calm for Zeke because he was already able to fight and cope with everything on his own. Now the most important thing was to identify the traitor who might be interested in Zeke's death. The first person the young wizard saw when he opened his eyes was of course his favorite uncle, and Willie wished Zeke a good morning. The boy asked his uncle who he was talking to, but Willie explained that he was just guarding his favorite nephew who was supposed to be watching over the magic tent. Zeke immediately remembered his assignment and became frightened. The young wizard saw how tired his new friends were and so he wanted them to rest in the magic tent. Zeke decided to sit with his uncle and guard the entrance to the tent, but then fell asleep. Willie explained to his nephew that it was too early for him to be guarding at that age when everyone else was asleep, but the boy just wanted to do something to help. The uncle only laughed at those words and decided that his little nephew wanted to join Theo to be in the world of adventure. But Zeke explained it all away with a desire to become stronger. In fact, the young wizard thought about becoming an adventurer in the future and fighting together with Theo against terrible monsters, because it is very interesting and profitable. Willie noticed Zeke's embarrassment and called him a child who wanted to become an adult as soon as possible. But the young wizard asked his uncle not to laugh at him. Just at that moment Emma came in and invited everyone to breakfast. Willie said that he had seen the knights return with ingredients and it would be good to know what they were eating. Zeke was shocked because he hadn't even heard anyone leave the magic tent. After a few minutes everyone was surprised by the abundance of food on the table, even hot and flavorful soup, and it looked like there was a cook around. Zeke noticed how Princess Diana was looking at the food intently and decided that she seemed to really like the fresh sandwiches. Willie was very glad that their dungeon was inhabited by edible monsters and not just the dreaded coal spiders. Hal was in agreement with the wizard, for they shouldn't have any problems with food. The bald knight really wanted to thank Willie and Zeke, for thanks to them not only could they rest in the tent, but they were protected while they slept. Emma explained how she was able to find various utensils in the magic tent and was able to prepare delicious dishes. Zeke meanwhile offered Princess Diana half of his sandwiches, for it was obvious how much she liked the dish. The girl was surprised and didn't understand how Zeke realized it, but the wizard explained that he realized it by the movement of his tail. Such words made Princess Diana instantly blush and was very embarrassed. Then the girl asked Zeke if it causes him only disgust, but the guy called it nonsense and said that this cute tail he even likes it very much. Camel was outraged and ordered her on the wizard not to insult the princess with such words. Zeke immediately tried to explain that he didn't mean to offend anyone and was misunderstood. But the knight was furious and ordered him not to tease the princess and promised to punish him even though he was still a child. But at that moment, a knife flew in front of Camel's face and stabbed into the table. Willie reminded the unstable knight of who he could now sit at the table and enjoy his meal, and advised him not to interfere with the children's conversations. Camille was immediately startled and apologized. Princess Diana tried to explain to the loyal knight that there was no need to worry so much. After all, Zeke had only paid her a few compliments and there was nothing wrong with that. Daniela was much calmer than her mate and inquired about future plans, for she needed to know how they would proceed. The girl knight said that the fastest way to leave the dungeon was to destroy the local boss. Willie agreed and already beforehand with the help of magic search found out that the boss is on the last floor of the dungeon, and they are now not far from this place. Most likely the boss is the king of the Red Blade, and on the way to him we'll have to meet a lot of monsters, but there should be no problems, because they should all be weak. Work together and then everything will happen quickly. Camel was still annoyed and did not understand how a wizard could determine the number of enemies at a distance. Willie explained that he couldn't determine the enemies, but he could figure out exactly what terrain was ahead of them. Hal, unlike Camel, was grateful for such help and knew how experienced wizards could easily identify enemies at a distance, and this ability would be very useful to them. Zeke was very proud of his favorite uncle and wanted to reach the same level of skill in the future, but there were still many different things besides magic that he wanted to learn. Hal offered to prepare for the march as soon as breakfast was over and Princess Diana allowed her knight to act, then thanked Zeke and Willie again for their invaluable help. Camel was angry that an unknown wizard was attracting a lot of attention from the princess, and ended up resentfully stating that there are only geniuses everywhere, and it's gross. Daniela after breakfast cautiously informed her partner Camel that she saw Willie contacting someone in the morning and reporting about the wreckage of the magic stone, and most likely they were here because of that magic stone. For that was the conclusions Willie had drawn when he muttered early in the morning. Camel was furious and decided that it was all the damn wizard's fault, and if he wanted to kill them all, they should warn the others immediately. But Daniela advised to calm down and explained that if they tried to expose the wizard now, he would immediately destroy everyone with his magic and they would not be able to prevent it. Camel agreed with this and only regretted that he was useless in this situation. But Daniela offered to think of another way, and then reminded her partner about his brother, a famous knight. Camel described how he had always been in the shadow of his successful brother, who had always achieved what others demanded of him. Everyone around him only looked up to his brother and he was truly an amazing person. Camel had hoped that when he became a knight he would be looked up to, but despite his best efforts nothing changed and he still remained in his brother's shadow. Daniela explained that she was the one who recommended Camel as the princess escort, because she thought he was perfect for the mission and had seen how strong and brave he was. Camel was incredibly surprised and thanked his partner for such trust. Daniela advised to stick together and then they can deal with any problems. And of course together I will not be able to defeat this scarlet wizard. Camel was encouraged by Daniela's words and promised to do everything to protect the princess. Soon after, on the 24th floor of the dungeon, Zeke was easily handling the most harmless monsters and getting food for the entire squad. The bald knight was surprised by Zeke's abilities. After all, he could handle groups of monsters alone thanks to his magical skills. But Willie explained that this boy had much more to learn, for this was not the limit of his abilities. Pal now understood why the wizard wanted to make a magic contract, for Zeke was indeed a walking gem and a very special child. The young wizard finished hunting, gathered a large amount of meat and other ingredients, and informed everyone that they would have a delicious meal. All this was very much disliked by the suspicious knight Camille. I didn't understand you how corpses disappear, and then pieces of clean meat appear in their place. Willie explained to the knight that the corpses disappear and are used as energy to sustain this dungeon, and this is usually how this long-known process is described. The main part of the monster's corpse disappears at once, but the valuable parts will not disappear immediately, but only if you leave them lying on the ground. Therefore, they could easily be picked up as prey or consumed as food. But Camel said that it is not always possible to find parts of monsters and sometimes even complete foods are caught, which is much more convenient and even stranger. Willie he has no explanation for this process, and maybe the dungeon is just a farm created by ancient civilizations. Camel continued to argue and called it all spooky sorcery. Zeke, meanwhile, noticed the sad expression on Princess Diana's face and tried to explain to her that there was no need to be afraid, because together they could handle everything. The girl explained that she wasn't afraid at all, and then she saw her fluffy tail again and blushed with embarrassment. Zeke apologized and didn't know how to help with the tail. The princess then asked the young wizard that wasn't he scared to fight monsters alone. Zeke didn't deny that he was indeed scared, but it was the only way he could get stronger. Zeke explained that he just wanted to protect those he cared about so that they would get hurt, and for that goal, he would continue to fight dangerous monsters. Diana praised Zeke, but the boy called his words just childish nonsense, then told her that in the future he still wanted to travel the world and learn new things. The boy started to get embarrassed and told her how sometimes he gets scared when he sees monsters, but still his desire to develop allows him to go forward and he likes to win. He also doesn't want to stay in one place in a confined space and wants to travel. Diana, listening to Zeke carefully, understood this feeling well. The princess actually always spent time inside the walls of her palace and she had everything thanks to the responsible servants. But when she looked at the other children she became very sad. Princess Diana envied the fun and free children who could run wherever they wanted and were not confined to a certain space. Zeke understood what the girl was talking about and offered to spend today's day together, and then pointed to a beautiful place where there were no monsters at all. There were strange, pleasant-smelling fruits on the beautiful trees, and there was even a fountain behind the trees, and Zeke suggested to look at this place together with Diana. The girl, of course, wanted to walk along with the young wizard, and Zeke held out his hand and advised her not to be afraid of anything, for they would be together, and if monsters appeared, he would be sure to protect her from attack. The princess was delighted by Zeke's words and gladly accepted his offer. But at that moment Camel appeared nearby and ordered Zeke not to touch Diana. Willie advised not to disturb the children, because there were no monsters ahead, and Pal supported this idea. Especially Emma was always near the princess. The bald knight admitted that it was the first time he saw the princess so happy, and Willie did not even doubt the friendly qualities of his nephew and praised Zeke. The young wizard enjoyed walking with Diana and forgot about all the problems they had. Together they tasted the pear-like fruit and then explored the local pond. Night Pal was always nearby and several times destroyed monsters that tried to stop the children from resting. His wielding of the blade pleased Zeke. After a long walk, Zeke and Diana would eat lunch with everyone else and then play again. But all of this was very much to Camel's liking, and he kept watching Zeke all the time. Then continuing to walk, the young wizard and the princess discovered a path that led to a strange door. It was the entrance to the last floor of the dungeon, and Uncle Willie explained that behind it was the main boss, whom they would have to defeat to get to the surface. Camel suggested that they waste no time and destroy the boss as soon as possible and save Princess Diana. But Willie advised not to hurry and reminded that the local boss is a rank B boss, and if Camel wants to defeat him without resting, then he is a common fool. The wizard suggested to spend the night and tomorrow morning after regaining his strength to destroy the boss. The uncle especially advised his nephew to rest, and Zeke decided that he might have to fight the boss alone. Willie explained that it was likely the last night they would spend in the dungeon, but that didn't mean everyone should relax. Diane decided to talk to Zeke before going to bed, because she was very worried and didn't want to say goodbye to her friend. Zeke was surprised that the girl had come to him alone, and as it turned out she had been allowed to do so by Emma and Pal. Diana explained that she needed some time and offered to move away not far from the tent. Her uncle didn't mind socializing, but still didn't want the children to walk around the dungeon alone without supervision. But Diana decided to convince the wizard. The girl explained that today might be the last time she could talk to Zeke in peace, and after that they would never see each other again. Willie agreed, but offered to keep the children safe and put an ice cage and tracking spell on them. That way he could come to their rescue if anything happened, but still they had to be careful. Zeke was overjoyed and suggested they go to a beautiful place where he had been looking for food during the day. Princess Diana of course agreed, and they went for a walk together. Willie decided that even if Zeke was attacked now, nothing dangerous would happen. Then the wizard found out that Count Pal and Emma were busy preparing dinner, which meant he needed to keep a close eye on the knights. Willie wanted to find the traitor as soon as possible, and now was the perfect moment to provoke this man into action. Meanwhile, Camel asked his partner Daniela what she was doing, because she was holding some unfamiliar magical instrument. The girl explained that this tool allows you to track the movement of Princess Diana, and it also reports on her condition. Camel was very surprised and didn't understand why she was doing this. Daniela explained that she wanted to prepare a special trap for the Scarlet Wizard. She suggested that Camel take the magic stone and tool and proceed as she said. Daniela stated that it was all to protect Princess Diana, and Camel was willing to do anything for that. The girl explained that they would only get one chance, and so they couldn't go wrong. Daniela said that only by destroying the treacherous wizard they would be able to protect the princess and return home alive. Diana and Zeke continued walking and found themselves in an open place where the starry sky was clearly visible. The girl didn't even expect to see something like this in the dungeon. The young wizard decided to surprise his friend, and with the help of magic quickly created several round soft balls. Zeke explained that these would serve them as comfortable chairs where they could sit and relax. Diana was pleased and took her seat. Sitting on the soft, comfortable chairs was indeed very pleasant, and eventually the young wizard asked what Diana wanted to talk to him about. The princess called the boy a very amazing person, and even though they were about the same age, Zeke already had incredible knowledge, and she was very pleased to feel his care. Diana explained that she wanted to thank her new friend officially as a princess, and if he needed anything in the future, he could come to her for help. Zeke considered himself an immature man, for there were many things he wasn't capable of doing, but despite that he was trying to learn and become stronger. Willie meanwhile thought about her nephew and realized that Zeke had no idea what a special child he was. Then the young wizard asked the princess about her knowledge of gems, but as it turned out Diana knew almost nothing about this sphere and could not tell anything new. Diana spoke well about how the Zeke family had been a driving force in the formation of the kingdom, so they had been granted the title of Marquis. And since the second son of the founder king was blood related to the Abel family, the family was called the Second Royal Family. Zeke had heard something like that before from his uncle, and Diana did her best to explain that for centuries the Abel family had been protecting something important and always treated it responsibly. The princess called it all a treasure of the able family, and the young wizard didn't understand what she was talking about, because Willie had never told him such details. Diana told him that according to rumors the gems are young talented people, but this is only a small part of the information that the royal families and the ruling classes of all nations have been able to obtain. The able family will never forgive anyone who dares to harm their treasure, which means important people have immense power. Zeke had no idea how important he could be to his family, for it was likely that he was the very treasure all those rumors were talking about. But Princess Diana didn't know anything else and was sure that when the time was right Zeke would find out from his relatives. The boy thought about it and decided that the princess was right. The girl advised him not to worry, because they both wanted to know the truth behind their fates. And then the princess advised to take another look at her, but the guy laughed and decided that it wasn't very similar. Princess Diana agreed, and she felt like she had known the young wizard for years, so the girl asked to just call her by her first name. Zeke was surprised by this request and awkwardly tried to call the princess by her first name and then wondered why she wanted to. Diana was confused and tried to find an explanation. In the end, the princess admitted that she wanted to be a real friend to Zeke, because they would probably never meet again and now they had to talk as equals. Diana thanked Zeke for the time they spent together, because I had never had so much fun. The princess promised to remember this wonderful time for the rest of her life, because she was able to forget about all her problems and not pay attention to her appearance. Diana explained that when she returns home, she will be an ordinary princess and she won't have as much fun there as she did here. That was why she wanted to socialize with Zeke as a close friend now. Zeke listened attentively to the girl's words and was surprised by such openness, because before he thought that princesses were too arrogant people. The young wizard admitted that he too would be happy to consider Diana his friend and see her only as his age, not as a princess. He's also very interested in looking at her tail, which expresses every emotion. Zeke then suggested that their friendship should not be broken even after they break up and leave this dungeon, because they can continue to communicate through letters and meet again someday. The young princess was happy to hear such words from her new friend and of course agreed to the proposal. She really wanted to meet Zeke again. The young wizard looked carefully at the princess and realized that in the future she would become a very beautiful girl. But now they were both still small and naive children. Meanwhile, Willie continued to follow the movements of his nephew and Diana, who had moved away to a safe distance. Count Powell and Emma still did not leave the tent and did not arouse suspicion. What was most disturbing was the behavior of the knights, and possibly they were the very traitors Willie was looking for. All attempts to locate the knights were fruitless, which meant that they were using a special magic item to conceal their movements. The wizard decided to act, because it was obvious that if Camel and Daniela were hiding, it meant that they had begun to act and now Zeke could be in danger. Scanning the area, Willie was surprised to find his nephew being carried in his arms by someone and they were getting closer. Willie ordered an immediate stop, wanting to save Zeke. Willie didn't understand how the traitors had managed to get rid of his magical ice cage, and it was unclear where the princess was now. The wizard decided to destroy all the knights who dared to harm his nephew, and he was absolutely indifferent who would be the first on his way. After a few minutes, Willie was able to catch up with the traitor, but he left his nephew and ran away. The wizard rushed to help his relative and grabbed Zeke. But as it turned out, it was just a magic doll, and Willie realized that he was trapped. And a few seconds later there was a terrible explosion. Camel was pleased with the result of his work, because the place where the wizard was completely destroyed, and now he decided that Willie died during the planned explosion. But alas, the young knight's joy lasted only a few minutes. Daniela delivered a sneaky sword strike from behind and shattered Camel's hopes for the future. Daniela struck her partner and called him a real idiot who never suspected her of betrayal, and so his death was deserved. Daniela still thanked Camel for his stupidity though, because other knights would never fall for such a trick. The mortally wounded lad felt disappointed, for everything his partner had told him was a lie. Daniela called his partner the most useless knight, and that's why she recommended him as the princess protector, because such an idiot couldn't even protect her from monsters. And thanks to the unique magic tool, even an idiot like Camel was able to deal with the incredibly powerful wizard Willie. Daniela enjoyed her victory, and now she only had to destroy the children in one night, which meant that no one would stop her from accomplishing her important task. Camel was shocked by such perfidy, and from the last forces tried to detain Daniela. But the girl knight rewarded her partner with another powerful blow, and then recognized that this guy had a huge potential to become a good knight. But unfortunately he was completely unable to head, and now he was dead in an unknown dungeon, and soon there wouldn't even be a trace of him left. And since Camel had always been in the shadow of his older brother, because of his disappearance no one would start searching for him and everyone would just forget him as a useless person. Those were the last words Camel heard from his partner, and he sincerely regretted that he had been so stupid and failed to recognize her as a traitor. Zeke and Diana of course heard the horrible explosion and decided that something terrible had happened, so they had to get back to the magic tent as soon as possible. But just at that moment, the huge door leading to the dungeon boss opened and then Emma and Count Pal came in. They were also startled by the horrible explosion and rushed to find the princess. Diana inquired what had happened, but the bald knight himself didn't know. Pal told how they were in the tent, and when they heard the sounds of the explosion, they quickly packed up and decided to explore the area. But as soon as they tried to get out of the magic tent, it turned out to be blocked by some kind of magical barrier, and they did not understand how this could happen. In the end, Count Pal was able to break through the barrier with brute force, but when they came out of the tent, they didn't hear any effects of the explosion and didn't realize what had happened. Zeke was very worried about his uncle and tried to find out where he was now. And a few minutes later Daniela came out to them and told them about how she and her partner had been attacked. The blood-smeared girl knight suggested that they were most likely attacked by the man behind their mysterious teleportation into this dungeon. Daniela then pointed to a huge door and explained that that was where the criminal had fled and Will and Camel were trying to catch up with him. The girl offered to help them immediately and Count Pal decided not to waste any time. The cunning girl knight wanted to do just that, and she suggested the princess to stay where she was and not to expose herself to danger, because the criminal could have accomplices behind the door. But Diana decided to go ahead with everyone else and Zeke promised to protect her. Behind the huge doors was a large room in the center of which sat the most dangerous inhabitant of this dungeon, the B-rank boss. Diana saw the huge creature in front of her and said that it was the king of the Red Blade, who had incredible power. Zeke looked around the room and didn't find his favorite uncle, and then asked where Willie and Camel were now. But Daniela only laughed evilly in response. A few seconds later, the doors to the room slammed shut, and the conniving girl knight called everyone present real idiots and activated the magic portal. Daniela no longer hid her true identity, and promised everyone here a gruesome death, and Pal realized that in front of him was the person who sent the princess to this creepy place. Daniela felt completely safe and explained to the bald knight that he realized everything too late, and foolish Camel and the Scarlet Wizard were already dead. But Zeke didn't believe his uncle was dead. Daniela stated that she absolutely didn't care who believed her and who didn't, but if Scarlet Wizard was still alive, he would have stayed here by now, and at that moment, the Red Blade King started to move. Daniela thought that a normal boss battle would be very boring, and so she was able to use magic to strengthen the Red Blade King, and she really wanted to see Princess Diana die. Big Pal was furious at Daniela's betrayal and wanted to destroy her, and the young wizard used the ability of the evaluative eye. Zeke found out that Daniela had awakened the boss with some kind of curse, and now his exact strength level was not clear and all his stats fluctuated too much. The boss' weakness was lightning intolerance, and Zeke decided to take action, because Daniela had started creating monsters. The dark magical energy spread very quickly and Daniela ordered everyone to sit still and enjoy the death of the princess, although everyone would have to die today. Count Pal ordered the young wizard to take the princess and run away, for if they didn't, they would die and there was no time to lose. Zeke of course agreed with this idea and wanted to take the frightened Diana to safety, for with his appraising eye he could see a closed door that could be opened. Getting to the door proved difficult as Daniela attacked the children, but the young wizard used the barrier of light and was able to protect the princess, and then counterattacked with the wind blade. Zeke began to realize that until he destroys the King of the Red Blade he will not be able to escape from this room, because this advanced boss has immense power. The best solution is to destroy the magic stone that Daniela stuck into the boss body, but unfortunately it is surrounded by several layers of barriers. The Red Blade King's weakness was lightning, but Zeke couldn't use lightning magic. And if one couldn't use magic that would destroy the main boss, then one must use another strongest magic to destroy the protective barrier. Destroying the magic stone would be no more than 20%. Zeke decided that his body would only allow him to use advanced magic once, so this decision is wrong, and defeating the boss with inferior magic wouldn't work. It was also impossible to constantly defend themselves, because sooner or later they would lose their defenses and then they would definitely die. Moreover, the pressure from the boss was increasing every second. But at that moment Princess Diana came up with a solution to the problem and offered to become a live bait for the monster. Zeke didn't even immediately believe the girl's words. The princess explained that she could not fight, but under Zeke's protective barrier she would try to escape. That way Daniela's attention could be diverted, and Zeke and Pal would defeat the spiders in the meantime. Diana decided that even if she was killed, everyone else should run away, because that was the only way they could make the victim as small as possible. Zeke was strongly against this idea, but the princess said that she was ready to put her life on the line and did not want to throw such words in vain. Already the girl called Zeke her friend and didn't want him to get hurt. The wizard could not refuse Diana and agreed to follow her plan. But still Zeke decided to act in his own way and offered to run away together, and then quickly running past the main boss, the young wizard was able to cut off his hand with a lightning blow. After that, Zeke left the princess in a protective cocoon. He promised to do everything to protect her and not let anyone else die today. The young wizard decided that he couldn't have gotten into this dungeon for nothing, and perhaps it was fate. But the only weakness of the enemy was lightning, which could not be used, which meant that there was almost no chance of victory. But still Zeke decided to change the situation and do the unbelievable in this critical situation. After all, he must emerge victorious from this battle and continue to live. The young wizard wanted most of all to protect the people dear to him, and now was the most suitable moment for that. Zeke tried to attack the monster with his flaming spear. Zeke realized that if he was able to defeat it, they would have a chance to escape. But it wasn't certain that it would be possible to destroy the magic stone on the first try. Unexpectedly, the young wizard discovered that the main boss's arm had regenerated, even though he had cut it off a few minutes ago. And now he was in danger. Count Pal, Emma and Princess Diana were watching everything happening and were very afraid for Zeke, but then there was a blinding flash caused by the explosion. The princess couldn't believe that her only friend and protector was dead, and then she noticed Daniela approaching us. Meanwhile, Zeke had come to his senses and realized that it was only because of the barrier of light that he had survived. But all he could do now was to spend his remaining strength on staying conscious and needed to get up as soon as possible. But at that moment the young wizard heard a strange voice calling him the first person able to find him, and was surprised that this person turned out to be a real gem. Zeke saw a strange white butterfly that he had seen a long time ago, and the voice kept talking and explained that the guy could only hear him with the help of this butterfly. It was all so unbelievable that the young wizard didn't understand at all who exactly was trying to talk to him through the little white butterfly. But then Zeke saw a huge black blade and remembered the words of his uncle when he told about valuable artifacts located in every dungeon, and it means that he was able to find such an artifact. Now it was clear that this voice belonged to the Black Sword, which advised the boy to gather all his strength and try to take his chance. Zeke knew it, but it was very difficult for him to get back on his feet. The young wizard decided to use his last chance to try to seize the valuable artifact, because he had no other choice in this situation. The sword was surprised by the boy's determination, but still called him not yet ready to be a real gem. But the sword was ready to be a weapon for the brave Zeke if he had the strength. At this moment, the insidious Daniela was simultaneously trying to break the protective barrier around Princess Diana and attacking Count Pal, hoping to break his resistance. Eventually, thanks to several powerful blows, the protective barrier around Diana was broken, and now Daniela offered the princess to meet her death with her eyes open. The insidious woman considered all humans to be stupid creatures and wanted to complete her mission as soon as possible and see the death of another talentless creature. But at that moment a bright magical flash flashed behind Daniela, which made the evil woman look around and see something incredible. As it turned out, the young wizard was able to curb the incredible power of a rare artifact and now held in his hands a weapon capable of destroying any opponent in this dungeon. Princess Diana was delighted by the boy's courage, and Daniela did not understand how a huge sword could become an elegant rapier in the hands of an annoying boy. The evil woman decided to use all her remaining power and demanded Zeke to surrender or die immediately. But the young wizard felt the power of the rare artifact in himself and now was not going to back down. With the help of the black rapier, Zeke created a magical hurricane, and despite the fact that he used all his magical power, he didn't feel weak, because the sword took all the load. Zeke believed in himself, and now he had no doubts about his victory, because he only had to deliver a decisive blow to the huge monster and then to the treacherous traitor Daniela. During the rapid attack, the young wizard was able to create with the help of fire magic an incredible fire flash, which completely engulfed the huge opponent. The main boss of the dungeon could not withstand such a powerful blow and shattered into hundreds of thousands of small shards, and Zeke believed that his own fate is in his hands. Once next to the princess, Zeke still felt weak, and Diana was happy to see her friend alive and decided that God had saved Zeke for his courage. Daniela was furious that she had failed with her unique magical tool and didn't understand why she always had to be disappointed with the world. But grabbing the black dagger, the cunning woman still decided to destroy everyone with her own hands, even if she had to die. Daniela sincerely wished to slaughter everyone, but at that moment her hand was wounded and the woman felt a sharp pain, then dropped her dagger and no longer threatened to kill anyone. The treacherous traitor didn't realize what was happening, and as soon as she saw the hole in the door there was a terrible explosion, and then Zeke heard the voice of a native. Of course it was the powerful wizard Willy, who despite serious injuries, carried the body of the naive night camel in his arms and now wanted to take revenge on Daniela. The cunning woman was shocked by the appearance of the man she thought was no longer alive, and now felt fear, and Willy was determined to make the woman answer for her terrible deeds. Willy moved very quickly and very surprised Count Powell, who didn't even notice how it happened. Still, the bald knight tried to keep a careful distance. Count Powell felt the badly wounded camel in his arms. Wizard Willy explained that even though this knight was a traitor, he was able to heal him, for his death would have grieved Zeke. Powell and Emma were shocked that the young knight had also turned out to be a traitor. Daniela meanwhile decided to fight at full strength and was confident she could defeat the wounded wizard. The treacherous woman attacked with dark magic arrows but the experienced wizard was able to repel the attack with a bright defense flash. After that, Vil decided to create a huge magical vortex, which scared Daniela so much that she realized how weak she was compared to her opponent. But as soon as the girl tried to escape, Willy was able to create an ice cage and trapped her rival, because it was impossible to let her just run away and not answer for all her crimes. Willy then explained that he couldn't be killed with the magical tools that were created in his country, and Daniela couldn't believe that her device was from the kingdom where Willy lived. It was indeed true, for Willy had immediately identified the maker's seal that was stamped on the shards and the magical item. But it was strange, for the traitor herself was originally from Estania. Daniela did not believe the words of the wizard and did not understand how it could be. But then Willy, tired of useless, stabbed the rival's leg and silenced her with a sharp pain. Willy decided it wasn't worth wasting time and forcing Daniela to say the information she needed, as it would be much more convenient to access her knowledge and memories later. Willy didn't want to hear the vile voice of the conniving woman and decided to use a more brutal method and pull all the necessary information directly from her head. But as soon as the sharp needles approached Daniela's head, there was a terrible explosion. Wizard Willy did not understand where the traitor disappeared, and then realized that the treacherous woman decided to use the portal to the surface, which appeared after the victory over the boss. Before leaving the dungeon for good, Daniela promised to take revenge on the Scarlet Wizard and make him beg for mercy before he died a horrible death. Vil decided that the woman was able to escape from the ice cage by using the teleportation stone. It was the kind of magic stone that could be used within the dungeon, and if he kept his cool, he could have prevented it. Slowly losing consciousness, the exhausted Zeke was glad to see his uncle alive, even though Daniela had fled. But the boy was sure that everything would be okay now, and they would make it home, and then he fell asleep. Willy advised the princess not to worry and explained that Zeke would be fine, because he had just used up a lot of magical power, and now he just needed to rest and recover. Diana was happy that everything was over like that and thanked the wizard for his help. But Willy was dissatisfied with the result, because he could not prevent much and was useless. The wizard thought that he was very late, and if he had delayed a few more minutes, most likely the princess and all the others would have died at the hands of the treacherous woman. Then Willy decided not to think about what had already happened and suggested that the girl go to the Count and Emma, who were also wounded, and after they were healed it would be possible to go up to the surface. Meanwhile, Zeke's consciousness was in another space, where the young wizard heard someone's very familiar and kind voice, which quietly called him by name. The next moment Zeke found himself in the arms of his loving mother and did not understand how this could be, for he really felt the touch of the kindest hands in the world. Lyra looked at her grown son with interest. For the last time she saw him he was very small and could not speak. Mom was very happy that her youngest son was growing up to be a healthy child. Lyra then apologized to Zeke for dragging him out to her so unexpectedly, but it was the only chance to talk after years of unbearable separation. Lyra decided to be honest with her son and explained that this was their last chance to see and talk. Zeke, of course, was just a normal kid and couldn't hold back tears at such sad words from his mom. Zeke apologized for not noticing her illness and not doing anything about it. But Lyra asked to calm down, for Zeke was not guilty of anything and her illness was incurable even with his especially strength. Her mother then explained that it wasn't just a disease but a very strong and insidious curse. But that didn't matter anymore, and now she wanted to pass on something important to her son. Lyra demonstrated the magic stone, calling it a great treasure. She then explained that this powerful force had protected her until Zeke was born, and now it would protect him from all dangers. Lyra didn't really want to give this treasure to her son, nor did she want it to bind Zeke throughout his life. But this was a fate that could not be escaped or changed in any way. The young wizard asked for an explanation of what exactly the Able family treasure was, and Lyra explained that in order to figure it out we needed to talk about God. Lyra told when we long ago this world was created by one of the gods of the divine realm. He loved this world so much that he often came down to the humans and spent happy days socializing and traveling with them. But one day in the world of the gods, there was a struggle over who would become the next king in their kingdom. And even the god who created the world of humans, who didn't like conflict, was drawn into it. His opponents wanted to take away the power of creation and use it to influence the human world. So in order to protect the people who were dear to the god, he broke his own soul into many shards and hid the power in them. After that, he scattered in secret from other gods the fragments of his soul in the world of people. The creator shattered his own power into shards and hid them in dungeons where they were protected. And he decided to leave the most valuable part of his power to the people he trusted the most. God felt that the core of his power could only be protected by one man, who was the treasure of the Able family. That is why their family became the possessor of great power and a dangerous secret. What really happened after this to the creators no one knows, but Zeke must understand from this story why exactly in their family is the most important treasure of this world. But now someone was able to find out this secret, and so far it was unknown who exactly it was. So now the guardians of this power will be targeted for the rest of their lives, because there are those who want to destroy this power, and there are those who want to possess it. Lyra realized what a heavy burden little Zeke would have to carry on her shoulders, and it did not give her peace, because now she could not influence his life. Mom gently hugged her child, and then the young wizard felt incredibly light and said that his mom is the kindest in this world, because even after her death, she still wants to protect him. Zeke asked his mom not to worry, because no matter what fate awaits him ahead, because he will always fight and overcome all the challenges with the help of his unique power. Zeke talked about the people who will be by his side, and that's why he won't fight the gaps alone. During all this time, he has made a lot of comrades and acquaintances, and he has a lot of things he wants to talk about. The guy explained that he is sure how he will meet many more wonderful people on his path in the future. The young wizard explained to his beloved mother that there are many dear people in this world, whom he wants to protect and who help him cope with difficulties. That is why he is ready to accept the treasure of the Able family and become a true guardian who will protect the legacy of the creator of this world from all the creepy and insidious forces. Then Zeke promised that when everything was over he would live the life he wanted with the people he cared for and would always remember his beloved mother who wanted the best for him. Lyra was delighted by her favorite son's words and hugged him, for he had indeed become strong. And then his mom asked Zeke to be careful and not to sacrifice his own happiness for a great cause, for he should enjoy his life with dear people. Lyra really wanted her little son to live a long happy life and never meet anything bad in his path. His mom's embrace was the warmest and Zeke could feel the kindness. But at that moment, the voice of the guide between life and death rang out, signaling the end of the date. Lyra thanked the guide for granting her selfish wish, and then Lyra said goodbye forever to her most important little treasure, who she sadly couldn't stay with. Despite the parting, her mother promised to always keep an eye on Zeke. The young wizard wanted to be with his beloved mom a little longer, but he couldn't affect the laws of the universe. Lyra gradually distanced herself and explained to her son that whenever he saw a white butterfly, he should remember her. After a few seconds, Lyra began to turn into a huge number of small snow-white butterflies and with a weakening voice promised to always be there for her little son. The young wizard could no longer contain his emotions and salty tears flooded his face. Zeke really wanted to grab his mom's hand, but she had already turned from fluttering little creatures. It ended as abruptly as it had begun, and now when Zeke opened his eyes he saw bright sunlight and his pet Hacky, who started hugging him happily. Then the young wizard saw his excited sister Theo and his always serious father Gilbert beside him, who were eagerly waiting for it to begin. Zeke looked happy and told them that he'd had the best dream ever and then inquired how he'd ended up on the surface. His father talked about how Willie had contacted them and explained where to go, and so they had arrived at the right place. Gilbert talked about how Princess Diana was fine. Unfortunately things were bad and the knights had to stand guard. Zeke was surprised and asked for more details. His father said that suddenly a serious rebellion broke out in the kingdom of Estania, and Princess Diana was suspected of betrayal and wanted to hang for the crime. After a while, Theo visited the hotel and Koan apologized for her unexpected visit, and then explained that there was an emergency, and she was willing to reserve the entire hotel, and for that she was ready to pay a huge amount of money. The girl asked to explain the situation to all the guests, and ensure that they moved to another place, and she would cover all these expenses. The owner of the inn agreed, but did not understand what was going on. Theo explained that it was all a state secret and she wouldn't be able to say anything, and the innkeeper shouldn't tell anyone what was going on in his inn. Once in the spacious room, Willie immediately cast a blocking spell, and explained to his brother that now no one could overhear them, and Gilbert praised the wizard. Diane then formally introduced herself and explained that she was the princess of the state of Estania, and Gilbert called himself the commander of the First Order of Knights of the Mandista Kingdom. Everyone already knew about the difficulties the princess had faced in the dungeon, and they were glad that she had managed to get out alive. Diana thanked them for their concern and called Willie her savior. Count Pal was very concerned about the rebellion that had occurred in their country, and the worst part was that Her Highness had become the leader of this rebellion, and it seemed crazy. Gilbert explained that the scale of the rebellion was small and it was about to be crushed. But now Princess Diana wanted to be sent to prison and the rebel army had stormed the capital. The princess inquired about the fate of the people, but as it turned out there were almost no dead or wounded, so this rebellion brought much turmoil. But the strangest thing was that Tobias, the first knight of the kingdom, had declared it was Dina who was responsible for the rebellion, and now she was wanted for a huge reward. Diana was amazed at the perfidy of her brother Tobias, and Count Pal didn't understand how all this could have happened when they were in a creepy dungeon and unable to lead the rebellion. Zeke also didn't understand what was going on and why it was Princess Diana who had been declared responsible for a sudden uprising that made no sense at all. Zeke explained how Diana risked her life and became bait for a horrible boss in the dungeon. The princess was worried about her subjects and was always thinking about other people, so she couldn't have organized a rebellion. Gilbert of course didn't believe in the little girl's guile, and knew about how the enemies had purposely sent her to the dungeon to destroy her insidiously. Zeke only now realized that Willie had been in constant contact with his brother. Gilbert explained that Diana's brother Tobias hadn't presented any evidence of the princess' involvement in the rebellion, and it all looked very suspicious. Everything looks like Tobias and just wants to get rid of Princess Diana, and for that he came up with this whole cunning plan with the rebellion and the dungeon. Everyone knew that Prince Tobias had a very complex and tough character, so it was not surprising that he could decide to do such a thing. But it was unclear why he was so angry with his sister, because she had no claim to the throne. And now it remained to be seen how many countries would believe his lies. Gilbert asked not to say such things in front of the princess, and Willie apologized for his frankness, because he sees things a little differently than other people. Stadiona stated that she didn't want people to fight and kill each other, and she couldn't believe that her brother Tobias had done such a terrible thing, because she hadn't done anything wrong to him. Gilbert advised her to calm down and explained to the princess that he was going to protect her and find out what really happened. And even if the suspicion about Tobias is groundless, Diana remains a princess of another state, and Willie advised Gilbert to think carefully about his decision. After all, if word got out that he was hiding the princess, there would be dire consequences. But Gilbert explained that he would not be able to sleep well if he sent the unjustly accused child to the gallows, especially since the girl had befriended Zeke. Willie agreed with his brother and did not want to argue with him, especially he saw what Diana was capable of, and she could not be as treacherous as her brother said about her. Then the wizard Willie told that actually he was investigating some incident that could be related to the kingdom of Estania. So if Count Pal and the princess help in this case, he will have a better chance of finding answers. Willie and Gilbert certainly didn't want to send Princess Diana to certain death and upset Zeke in this way. The young wizard thanked his relatives for their help and was glad that the princess would stay with him. Count Pal was also grateful for the help, and Uncle Willie asked the princess to borrow her magic tool, which she used to disguise her appearance. Willie explained that there was an excellent magic tool wizard in this town, and so in order for the princess to continue to disguise her appearance, it would be necessary to repair this magic tool. While Willie decided to go to the master, his brother Gilbert wanted to send a report. Although he didn't know how he would be able to convince everyone of his decision to hide and protect Princess Diana, Willie decided to realize an idea and then explained that in order for it to work he would need Princess Diana's help, if she was okay with it. Willie asked the girl to come to the Abel family mansion after her cloaking object was repaired. There Diana could sit out until everything settled down and feel safe. The girl promised not to run away and thanked them for their kindness and hospitality. Diana felt at home next to Zeke. In the meantime, Uncle Villa decided to finish another very important business, of which he had as usual a lot. Before leaving the room, the powerful wizard decided to add intrigue and announced his desire to talk to one more important person. Meanwhile, Camel was unconscious and remembered the moment of his defeat, and agreed with Daniela, who called him a useless loser. The only thing the young knight regretted was that he could not protect the princess, and he did not want to die after such a terrible disgrace. After Camel woke up, he was frightened and surprised to see Princess Diana in front of him. The girl advised him not to make any sudden movements, and Pal asked Diana not to get close to the traitor. But despite everything that had happened, the princess was very happy to see the young knight alive, and Camel did not know how to react to the tears of the princess. Willie then explained that he had purposely not treated the knight's wounds so that he would not be able to resist. And now they need to talk about the assassination attempt on Princess Diana, which took place in the dungeon. The wizard advised Camel not to try to do something stupid, because there are guards everywhere, who will immediately catch him and punish him severely for disobedience. Zeke decided that his uncle was in a very somber mood right now, and he looked completely different than usual. Right now, Willie was acting like the deputy commander of the 3rd magic group and was ready for brutal action. Camel didn't know how he should act in this difficult situation, but he still wasn't going to run away, because he felt responsible for what happened in the dungeon. The young knight asked to forgive him for his stupidity, because everything that happened was a terrible mistake. Camel promised to answer all questions and was ready to bear any punishment, but in fact he knew almost nothing. But Willie still called the young knight they are such a stupid man, since he now decided to cooperate rather than resist. To begin with, tell him how long ago Camel had teamed up with Daniela. The young knight explained that it happened in the dungeon after Daniela revealed that she suspected Willie of being the one who teleported the princess and planned to make an assassination attempt on her. Uncle Willie was surprised at the young knight's frivolity and didn't understand how he could take Daniela's word for it, and not even try to check everything. Count Pal explained to the wizard that the princess's attendants were usually chosen for their abilities and accomplishments, so doubting Camille's loyalty was the same as doubting the loyalty of close aristocrats or royalty. These words made Willie think, and he suggested that perhaps Daniela also belonged to an aristocratic family and therefore was interested in neutralizing Princess Diana. Pal called the treacherous night girl a supporter of Prince Tobias, and now Willie began to gradually understand how everything happened. But Camel knew nothing about Daniela's life and merely carried out her orders. Then the wizard asked the young knight to tell everything he knew about the rebellion that Princess Diana had started in the kingdom of Estania. The young knight was puzzled and did not understand how the young Princess Diana could organize and lead a rebellion, so he called it all some silly nonsense. But Willie did not believe Camille's words, and the young knight, forgetting about his wounds, began to gesticulate vigorously and call those who dared to accuse Princess Diana of such things idiots. Camel said that he spent a lot of time with the princess, and therefore he is completely sure that she could not commit such a despicable act, because Diana did not even accuse the man who betrayed her. Willie advised the guy not to worry and explained that no one here accuses the princess of treason. But the wizard still didn't want to trust the words of the knight who tried to kill him in the dungeon. Camel still wanted to prove honesty and suggested Willie to use magic that would allow him to speak only the truth. The wizard thought about this suggestion and decided that this idea was not such a bad one. Willie explained to the young knight that he could easily get into his head and find out all the truth that was stored there, if Camel was willing to let him do it. The boy was scared, but the wizard immediately explained that he wasn't going to cut his head open, for they had a special magical tool that could be used to extract a person's memories. Although they had never used such a tool on lying people before, so there could be the most unpredictable side effects, and Camel should be prepared to suffer a little. Zeke wanted to interfere, but Willie stopped him with a gesture and then explained to the young knight that this was the only way they could trust him, and if he really did protect the princess for a long time, they would easily find proof of his innocence. Willie looked at the knight carefully and tried to understand if this guy was willing to risk his life for the sake of giving everyone reliable information. Princess Diana did not want Camel to get hurt, but the young knight still gathered courage and said that he was ready to prove the innocence of the princess because he had no reason to doubt. Camel wanted to answer for everything he had done in the dungeon and fulfill his duty as the princess's protector, and he was tired of being a regular stupid idiot who was always doing something wrong. Wizard Willie praised the young knight for his determination, and so now they could begin the process of extracting the memories from Camel's head. Willie enjoyed the process and then explained to the agitated lad that they wouldn't be able to do any testing now anyway, as they were in chaos because of the broken teleportation stone. Camel didn't understand anything and thought he was being laughed at. Willie advised the young knight not to worry and explained that the magic tool was not dangerous at all and no one had ever been hurt. Camel was outraged at how cunningly Willie had tricked him and frightened him. But the wizard reminded the knight of how he had tried to blow him up in the dungeon and wanted any punishment for his mistake, so he shouldn't complain in this situation. Willie then said goodbye to Zeke and Diana and suggested that the young knight move to a more convenient location to use the magic tool on him. The princess was frightened, and the young wizard promised that everything would be alright, for her uncle Willie is a very kind man, even in spite of all his tricks and harsh words. Diana believed her friend, but still worried about what might happen in the future. And now the princess decided to stay calm and wait for the results of the investigation. Zeke saw how worried the young princess was and advised her not to keep it all to herself, because everyone around her was ready to support and help her. The guy agreed that something terrible had happened, but Diana needed to realize that she was not facing this problem alone, because Pal, Emma and the whole Abel family were with her. Zeke also promised to always be by the princess' side, and that's why everything will be fine, because together they can surely cope with any problems and threats. These words made the girl think, and she believed that together they could really find out the whole truth and cope with the terrible threat. Zeke knew that he had only managed the dungeon because of his luck, and it would be much harder ahead of him. The power of the Abel family treasure can change the whole world, and will have to face many challenges to protect it. But still, the young wizard was determined not to let anyone die, and for this goal he had to become much stronger than he is now. A few days later at MANHWA Castle, Julius was laughing as he read a letter from the wizard Willy, and it was very uplifting. Julius was very amused to read the wizard's arguments, and he decided that the Abel family was worthy of his attention, for there was even a treasure involved in this story. Julius asked the servant to schedule an audience with the Abel family, for it was necessary to discuss with Willy the outrageous things he had asked for in the letter. Julius was very surprised and interested in the favor requested by the Abel family, Willy and his brother Gilbert, and looked forward to meeting them. Back at home, Zeke felt the strong embrace of Marie and Alberto again. Everyone was very happy to see him home and already knew of his dangerous adventures in the dungeon and were very worried about his youngest brother. Alberto was looking forward to organizing a party in honor of Zeke's return and of course prepared an interesting gift for him. The older brother as always decided to play a joke on the younger one and put some girl jewelry on his head. Marie was delighted, because now Zeke was very much like a little angel. But the young wizard of course didn't want to wear anything like that and reminded him that he was a boy. Though Alberto decided that it didn't matter at all, for a cute person should wear cute things. Theo asked to still allow Zeke to get some rest after his long journey, and then introduced Princess Diana as a guest in their home. Alberta apologized and explained that before his father left for the capital he had asked to take care of Princess Diana. But the princess advised Alberta not to apologize, because such a warm relationship between siblings is very much to her liking. For the princess in the house was already prepared a great room, which will be very easy to protect, and until the situation is not settled she better live in it. Alberta promised to do everything possible so that Diana could breathe a full breath and feel at home. That's why the princess and her friends can come to her for any reason. Diana, Count Pal and Emma thanked all the residents of the house for their hospitality and care. Zeke promised to visit Princess Diana every chance he got. If she had any favorite books, he could bring them to her along with sweets so she wouldn't be bored. Diana promised to wait for Zeke, and Marie noticed how her little brother was very good with the princess, and asked for more details about their friendship. Finding himself on his bed in his favorite room, the young wizard felt truly at home and was very happy to hug Hacky, whom he missed. It was in this place that Zeke felt best, for here he felt calm and safe. The little tiger cub also liked this room very much already, and was used to living here. Zeke remembered that he had only wanted to get the magic sand from the Forest of Spirits and could not have imagined that something like this would happen to him. But in the end he got much more than he wanted. The magnificent sword from the dungeon no longer spoke to him, but thanks to this artifact, Zeke was able to use advanced magic without depleting his own body. The guy speculated that perhaps it was because he was able to overcome the challenge he faced in the dungeon. Even with an appraising eye, it was impossible to know all the details about this artifact, and it was only known it could be used by people who were chosen by the sword itself. This artifact lightened the load on the body when using advanced magic. The magic assistant tried to study this sword, but he couldn't see anything. There was a very strong seal on this artifact with a mysterious power in it. Zeke was surprised by such a mystery. The assistant was very upset that he was not able to investigate this artifact and decided that now he would lose his status as a unique appraiser. But Zeke advised him not to worry and wished him luck. The guy remembered that this blade knew of an important treasure of the Abel family, and dungeons are places created to protect treasures, the very shards of the creator's soul. There was a lot Zeke didn't understand, but he had promised his mother to protect the treasure of the Abel family. But how exactly to do it was unknown, because it was all shrouded in mystery that needed to be unraveled. The young wizard decided to ask his father or look for information among the books of the Abel family. All the more it was necessary to train his magical abilities, because more and more often he had to face dangerous situations. Zeke wanted to ask Uncle Willie for help, but it was impossible to reveal the secret of his special element, and so it was difficult to find a way out of this situation on his own. There were secrets everywhere, and he felt how scared he was. That was why Zeke didn't want to alarm his relatives and cause trouble for them. But there were no other options, because now it was time for him to rely on his family completely, just like his beloved mother wanted him to. Meanwhile, Willie and Gilbert arrived in the royal capital to meet with Prince Julius. His Highness wanted to personally listen to the representatives of the Abel family, and after that make his decision. Therefore, the two brothers had a long conversation with the Crown Prince, because they needed to convince him to support them. Gilbert, unlike his cheerful brother, was nervous before this meeting, and Willie knew how his brother disliked negotiations, and even more so to know his attitude towards Julius. Gilbert and Willie met the prince and apologized for keeping him waiting. But Julius explained that it was no big deal as he could work from anywhere, and he was looking forward to hearing interesting stories from his guests today. Julius told how much fun and interest he had had when he read the letter from Willie, and even admitted that he had reread it several times and was intrigued. The Crown Prince didn't hold back his laughter and apologized to his guests, but Willie didn't remember there being anything funny enough in his letter to cheer Julius up so much. But the shrewd Crown Prince immediately stated that he had many questions for the guests, and suggested they start with their main objective. Julius was wondering why the Abel family wanted to protect Princess Diana and make the neighboring state of Estania their enemy. After all, it goes against common sense, and why the powerful wizard Willie had decided to be very helpful and favorable to Princess Diana, and what could have attracted him to her country so much that he would take such a risk. Willie had not at all expected the Crown Prince to learn so much information from his one brief letter and promised to explain his motives. For starters, the wizards wanted information about the magic school, and this caused the prince to be surprised. Willie told him that the murderer was from Estania, and that this woman who attacked them in the dungeon used a magical tool made in the magic school. This raises a lot of questions, because the school is an untouchable area even for the royal family, a fortress built using magical technology. Therefore, people can't just walk in there and steal a magical tool for their own dastardly purposes. Willie was sure that there was a traitor inside the magic school who had given the magic tool to the assassin, and so the identity of that person should be found out. Gilbert, on the other hand, recalled how someone had purposefully sent a curse on their family. So they have been looking for the culprit for several years now, and they are not going to give up, because many people died because of this curse. And after the latest incident, they have reason to believe that a person from the magic school might be connected to this curse. Julius decided that it was related to the Abel family's treasure, and that's why no one will let them access the magic school. It was known that the top of the magic school was very wary of the royal family and the Abel family, and for all the internal affairs of the school are responsible for the Shadow Ministry of Magic, and it is a great place where you can do secret deeds. In the magic school are trained heirs of many noble families, and in fact, all these students can turn into hostages, so you cannot act rashly and straightforwardly. Willie explained that they can't get information from this school, so they only have to look for it by other methods, because sooner or later the bobbin will leak. Julius decided that that was why the Adele brothers wanted to enlist Princess Diana's support, and had chosen such a clever workaround, though they didn't usually do such things. Willie explained that he personally was willing to choose any path, even the most difficult one, in order to secure the treasure of the Abel family, and there was nothing strange about it. Gilbert promised to be sure to find the man who had harmed his family, for he must receive the punishment he deserved, and Julius understood the purpose of his guests. But the prince saw no benefit to his royal family in all this, and he did not even understand what the precious treasure of the Abel family was, so he had no interest in lending a helping hand. Willie disagreed. After all, the information he received about the magic school would be useful to the royal family. But Julius wasn't sure about it, because any information remains unknown. And despite the fact that their families have been working together for a long time, it will not be easy to protect a suspect in fomenting rebellion, and everyone should understand the risks involved. Then the Crown Prince reminded him that there was something else important in the letter, and Julius laughed again. But Willie did not understand what was so funny in his letter. The Crown Prince admitted that he didn't understand much of what he had read in the letter, but he thought that everything that was mentioned was necessary to protect Princess Diana, and Willie confirmed it. Julius apologized for his laughter and offered to listen to his counter-offer, and if the offer was accepted he would personally negotiate with Estania. Julius wanted Willie to accept the honorary title, and then the wizard would become a caged bird for the royal family for life. After all, thanks to Willie, the kingdom's magical technology became much better, and also his combat skills were unrivaled. Willie was able to clear countless dungeons and obtained a huge number of artifacts. Therefore, the power he wields is capable of changing the country, and there is no one in this world with the same talent, and so it is impossible to let Willie change sides. The wizard was surprised, as he was not going to work for another country. The Crown Prince replied that this was not an accusation, but merely a suggestion, and therefore the possibility could not be ruled out. Julius didn't care about the rest of Willie's relatives, and he only wanted him because he must belong to the royal family. The prince explained that Willie was very different from his brother Gilbert, filled with patriotism, loyalty, and love for his country, and that's why it was necessary for Vil to be bound by a treaty. All this did not please the wizard, for it was a golden cage from which he would not be able to escape. But Julius called himself a prudent man who always considers the worst-case scenario. Even so, he holds Willie in high esteem and believes that for the safety of the country, he must remain on the radar, and his accomplishments deserve the highest title. Julius advised him not to see anything wrong with it, because once Willie gets the title he will be able to immerse himself in state affairs and learn a lot of useful things. The Crown Prince waited for an answer from the wizard and wondered whether Willie would agree to put himself on a golden chain, or whether he would send Princess Diana home, where she would die. Eventually Willie agreed to accept the title from the Crown Prince's hands, and this pleased Julius, who always liked a winner. The prince offered his new subject to prepare a mansion and some servants for himself, for now he would need assistance. Julius explained that the ceremony would take place in a month, and if Willie did not have time to prepare, there would be no negotiations with Estania. Julius suggested the wizard not to worry and to think about it, because when he became part of the royal family he would have more influence during the negotiations. Willie understood that, but still wasn't too happy about his title. The prince offered to take the land on the western border, which had recently been explored, and there was nothing there yet. Willie was surprised by the offer and didn't expect to farm, but this only made Julius laugh, who had completely different plans. And while Willie was preparing for the ceremony, the prince promised to prepare for the negotiations. But now he had very important things to do, and Julius promised to look forward to their next meeting. Left alone with his brother, Willie could not hold back any longer, and was shocked at how cleverly the prince had led him into a trap from which he could not escape. Gilbert advised me to worry about this royal family is a very great honor, and one should rejoice in the situation. But Willie reminded his brother that he always didn't care about titles, because it would make his job even more difficult. Willie still decided not to worry, because now he was ready to do it for his favorite nephew and sincerely wanted to help him save Princess Diana. After clearing the dungeon, the treasure inside Zeke showed itself, which meant there was some important reason for it. Willie decided to continue taking care of his nephew despite any difficulties. Gilbert suggested that his brother build a mansion near their family lands, but Willie decided that it was not worth it, as he was not going to be home all the time and could just buy a vacant house nearby. Gilbert advised to think about the next problem, because it was necessary to find a suitable vassal, and it would be very difficult to do it in a short period of time. Willie agreed, because if he simply borrowed a vassal from his brother, the Crown Prince would immediately find out about it and would not agree to such a thing. All the more it is impossible to involve an outsider, because their family contains many secrets. The wizard began to think about all the people who could be suitable for the role of a vassal, and who could be trusted representatives of the able family, and finally he had an idea. Such a person could be the brave and honest adventurer Nicola, who always helped the able family and was a good friend of Theo.